Hey, what's up? It's Cute What If. This side. Today we will be seeing what if Deku was quirkless but unstoppable. Before we move ahead with the FIC, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future what ifs like this. When Izuku Midoriya turned 4, he was filled with excitement. This was the age when children could manifest their superpowers, known as quirks. It was the day he and his mother would discover what quirk he had developed, a crucial step toward becoming the hero he had always dreamed of being. He hoped it would be as impressive as Katsuki Bakugo's mother's quirk, or perhaps even a combination of his parents' abilities. However, he never anticipated the news that would change his path. As they walked through the hospital hallways, Izuku eagerly asked his mother what kind of quirk he might have. He wished for something extraordinary. Inko, his mother, assured him that it would be very cool. After some time, a nurse called them in and led them to the doctor, who conducted an X-ray on Izuku. When the doctor returned with the results, Inko's heart raced with anticipation. She asked what her son's quirk was, but the doctor's expression shifted to one of pity. He hesitated before delivering the news. "I'm sorry, kid, but I'm afraid you won't be developing a quirk," he said. The words struck Izuku like a bolt of lightning, paralyzing him momentarily as his mind raced with thoughts of his dreams. The only question that echoed in his mind was whether he could still become a hero. Inko, shocked, questioned how this could be possible. The doctor pointed to an X-ray of Izuku's foot, explaining that quirk users typically lose the second joint on their pinky toe, while Izuku had both. Snapping out of his daze, Izuku looked at his mother, who was in tears, apologizing for the news. He hugged her tightly and reassured her that it wasn't her fault. He declared that whether he had a quirk or not, his dream remained unchanged. He would work harder than anyone else to achieve his goals. Inko, still emotional, embraced him and expressed her unwavering support. Returning home, Izuku understood that without a quirk, he needed to compensate with intelligence and physical strength. He began planning a rigorous training regime, focusing on studying and searching for nearby hand-to-hand combat classes, though he found that most wouldn't accept a 4-year-old. He resolved to train on his own, starting with simple exercises like push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and running. He pushed himself to his limits, often exhausting himself. Izuku also watched martial arts videos, trying to learn effective techniques for one-on-one encounters or against larger groups, though it was challenging without a teacher. He dedicated himself to his studies, striving for top grades in all subjects. He took notes on various quirks, analyzing their strengths, weaknesses, and how to counter or improve them. When the kids in kindergarten discovered he was quirkless, they began to bully him, especially Katsuki Bakugo, whom he called Kaken, a nickname from their childhood friendship. Kaken, who had developed a powerful quirk, had changed, becoming arrogant and dismissive. As time passed, Izuku's training intensified, and he began to see improvements. The other children noticed changes in him, whether it was his exhaustion in class or his dedication to his studies, which frustrated them, especially Kaken. Izuku's confidence grew, and his stuttering diminished, much to Kaken's annoyance. 10 years later, as he approached the end of junior high school, Izuku reflected on the many experiences that had shaped him. He had learned that heroes were not always the paragons he once believed them to be, they were just like ordinary citizens. After turning 8, he had trained in various hand-to-hand combat techniques, supplementing his training with blunt weapons and anything he could find. His physical strength had improved significantly, and he discovered books in the library about surpassing one's limits, which others dismissed as mere fiction. Izuku's desire to become a hero had only intensified, especially as he witnessed people suffering when heroes were unavailable or when villains wreaked havoc. This motivated him to become a vigilante, assisting those in need until he could enroll in UA High School and earn his hero license. Along the way, he made allies who dubbed him Limitbreaker. As the last day of junior high approached, excitement filled the air. Izuku, however, was focused on training for the UA entrance exam in 10 months, determined to achieve his dream of becoming a hero. The teacher addressed the class, urging them to consider their future career choices. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed application papers into the air, exclaiming with enthusiasm that everyone would be pursuing the hero course. The students began to showcase their quirks, which Izuku found unimpressive. He thought to himself that many of them seemed to want to be heroes for selfish reasons. Bakugo shouted at the teacher, insisting he shouldn't be grouped with what he called a bunch of rejects. Izuku sighed, knowing this would only lead to trouble. He turned his attention back to his notebook, where he meticulously recorded details about interesting quirks. This practice helped him avoid bad situations when he was out on patrol or when he encountered pro-heroes. As Bakugo continued to boast about his ambitions, Izuku felt frustrated by the noise around him. He thought of Bakugo as a selfish hero who cared only for himself. Suddenly, the teacher directed a question at Izuku, asking if he had applied to UA as well. Laughter erupted from the class, leaving Izuku feeling embarrassed and determined to prove them wrong. Bakugo lashed out, causing chaos by blowing up Izuku's table. Izuku quickly rolled out of the way and regained his footing, standing firm. Bakugo taunted him, claiming that a quirkless person like Izuku could never hope to compete with him. Izuku responded with sarcasm, which only fueled Bakugo's anger. He warned Izuku to stay out of his way, but Izuku remained unfazed, suggesting that Bakugo's anger could be harmful to him. Bakugo shouted in frustration, throwing a punch that Izuku easily dodged. Seizing the moment, Izuku grabbed his belongings and sprinted out of the classroom just as the bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. On his way home, Izuku contemplated his training plans for the next 10 months, debating whether to focus on developing the Limitbreaker technique or improving his hand-to-hand combat skills. Suddenly, he instinctively dodged an attack, a testament to his training and muscle memory. A voice interrupted his thoughts, revealing a villain in pursuit of him, claiming to need a disguise. As the villain spoke, Izuku analyzed the situation, noting that only the villain's eyes were solid. Before the villain could finish, Izuku threw his bag with great force, hitting the villain's eye and causing him to growl in pain. Seizing the opportunity, Izuku rushed in to assess the villain's weaknesses. Just as he prepared to leap for an attack, a powerful voice echoed through the tunnel. All Might, the #1 hero, had arrived. Izuku had encountered him before during a patrol, which had complicated his situation. All Might charged up his attack, unleashing a powerful blow that shattered the sludge villain into pieces. Izuku braced himself against the force of the wind created by the impact. Once the chaos settled, All Might checked on Izuku, who stood up and dusted himself off. Grateful, Izuku expressed his thanks, bowing slightly in appreciation as All Might began to gather the remnants of the villain. Although Izuku felt he could have handled the situation himself, he appreciated All Might's intervention. As All Might prepared to leave, Izuku called out to him, eager to ask a question that had been on his mind for a long time. All Might, though wanting to depart, turned around with a proud demeanor. Izuku asked if a quirkless boy like him could ever become a hero capable of saving lives and fighting villains. He hoped for a different response, but All Might's answer echoed the sentiments he had heard before. Understanding the implications, Izuku interrupted, acknowledging that he might be seen as a liability. He considered other professions like firefighting or police work, but still thanked All Might before bidding him farewell. As I turned to leave, I heard All Might trying to respond, but he coughed instead. Glancing back, I noticed blood trickling from his mouth, accompanied by a curse muttered under his breath. This was intriguing. I walked home alone, lost in thought. Perhaps the drawbacks of his quirk were catching up to him, or maybe there was a time limit involved. If neither of those were the case, then he might have sustained an injury that affected his abilities. I recalled the fight against Toxic Chainsaw, where the changes first appeared. But my thoughts were interrupted by the earpiece I used to communicate with other vigilantes and trusted sources I had met during my patrols. They were the closest friends I had in a long time, who accepted me for who I was. Among them, I admired Knuckleduster the most, as he was quirkless like me. Knuckleduster's voice crackled through the earpiece, asking if I had seen the news. I hadn't, so he informed me about a sludge villain attacking downtown with a hostage. He was too far away to reach in time and asked for my help. I assured him I was on my way, launching myself into the distance toward the scene. Upon arrival, I found the street in chaos, with crumbling buildings and flames licking at the sky. Memories flooded back as I navigated through the crowd and spotted the same sludge villain that All Might had caught. How had he escaped? Was it an accident, or was it due to his circumstances? I noticed several heroes on the scene, including Mount Lady, Kamui Woods, Backdraft, and Death Arms, along with some police officers. They seemed to be doing nothing to stop the villain, and I felt a surge of urgency as I spotted Kaken in danger. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the protests of heroes and officers trying to stop me. The sludge villain noticed me and taunted that he had wanted to use me as a disguise. Before he could finish, I picked up a rock from the debris and threw it at his eye, creating a small gust of wind that extinguished some flames on the street. The villain groaned in pain. Kaken took a moment to breathe, and I reached into the sludge, feeling the solid flesh of his wrist. I yanked him free, launching him into the crowd, which surprised everyone. I yelled for them to take care of him, then turned my attention back to the villain, who was recovering from the throw. He raged at me, vowing to make me pay for my actions. I smiled at his fury, eager to test my theory about my kick's effectiveness. I teased him, challenging his strength. He swung at me, and the impact raised a cloud of dust. The crowd gasped, fearing for my safety. As the dust settled, I was behind the sludge, leaping high into the air and preparing an axe kick aimed at his head. The villain's bravado faltered as I made contact, my leg sinking in slightly before he collapsed to the ground, unconscious. The crowd erupted in cheers, praising my efforts, but I ignored them and started to leave. Kamui Woods grabbed my shoulder, expressing concern for my safety. I shrugged off his hand, continuing forward, only to be blocked by Death Arms, who questioned my recklessness. I responded sarcastically, acknowledging their concerns but emphasizing that I couldn't just stand by while Kaken was in danger. I pointed out that they had done nothing to help, while I had acted to save him, regardless of my feelings toward him. I questioned their definition of heroism, wondering if they were truly selfless. Kamui Woods explained that their quirks were ineffective against the sludge, while mine had proven powerful in that situation. I laughed at the irony, pointing out that life doesn't prepare you for every scenario, and improvisation is key. I suggested that they could have thrown something at the villain's eyes, the most vulnerable part of his body. Mount Lady asked why I found that funny, and I revealed that I was quirkless. The revelation shocked the heroes and onlookers as I made my exit. Death Arms reminded me that I still needed to fill out a report about the incident. I didn't bother looking back. Izuku felt the weight of the moment as he addressed the crowd, acknowledging their disbelief. He expressed that they would trust the words of a pro-hero over his own, suggesting that the hero take credit for defeating the so-called powerful villain. He decided to leave, leaving the onlookers with blank expressions. Upon arriving home, Izuku greeted his mother, who unexpectedly jumped into his arms, hugging him tightly. She bombarded him with questions, her voice filled with concern. She wanted to know if he was hurt and if they should go to the hospital. Izuku reassured her that he was fine, and after a moment of hesitation, she released him. She then mentioned that she had made his favorite katsudon and urged him to eat before it got cold. A smile spread across his face at the thought of the meal. She also informed him that he had received a letter from UA, placing it on his table. After enjoying his food, he headed to his room, already guessing the contents of the letter. As he opened it, he read the disappointing news. He had not been accepted into the UA entrance exam for the hero department. Instead, they suggested he consider the general department, which they had already applied for him. The letter concluded with well wishes from Principal Nedzu. Izuku sighed, acknowledging the reality of being a quirkless student in a hero department. He resolved to train harder, knowing there would always be someone stronger out there. The next day, he woke up at 5 in the morning, following his usual morning routine. He began with a full-body workout to prepare for the day ahead. After finishing in the bathroom, he stepped out of the shower and caught a glimpse of his lean, muscular body in the mirror. His reflection revealed scars covering him from neck to toe, the most prominent being a burn mark that stretched from his left shoulder down to his lower right hip, accompanied by various cut marks on his arms and legs. Flashback to when Izuku was 12 years old. It was around 8 or 9 in the evening when he picked up groceries from the supermarket, as his mother had left for work overnight. He was contemplating what to cook for himself when an explosion shattered the calm, followed by screams for help. Instinctively, he ran toward the chaos. As he approached, he saw a burning building and a hero in the distance engaged in battle with a group of villains. Setting aside his admiration for heroes, he focused on the people in need, realizing there were no authorities present. He urged the frightened crowd to move away from the building to safety, discarding his groceries without a second thought. As he reached the front double doors, he heard cries for help from within. He shouted for anyone trapped inside to step away from the door, and when he heard footsteps retreating, he prepared to force the door open. As he entered, he asked the people outside if anyone else was still inside. They informed him that there were several people trapped on the higher floors, and one man mentioned a potential villain lurking among them. Thanking them, he instructed them to get help and dashed up the burning stairs, calling out for any signs of life. Reaching the 5th floor, he continued to assist those on the lower levels. He shouted for anyone in need, and a desperate mother's voice reached him, pleading for help as she and her baby were trapped. The thick smoke was suffocating, but he pressed on, determined to save them. He kicked down the door and rushed into the smoke-filled room, spotting the two figures. The mother expressed her relief upon seeing him, but he quickly assessed the situation and noticed a large, burning plank blocking their escape. He took off his jacket and leaped over the obstacle, using it to shield them from the flames. He assured them it would be a rough ride as he lifted the mother and her baby in a bridal carry. As he made his way back to the door, debris began to fall from the ceiling. In a split second, he threw the mother and child toward the stairs, ensuring they were safe while he couldn't escape the falling rubble in time. A sharp edge scraped against his shoulder, causing pain to shoot through him as he felt blood trickle down. Despite the agony, he remained focused, assuring the mother that he would find another way out and urged her to leave without worrying about him. "Okay, but make it out of here alive, you hear me?" The response was a simple affirmation, but doubts crept into thoughts about false hopes while walking down the hallway. A staircase came into view, bringing a sense of relief, but then a voice interrupted. A man with a menacing grin approached, his presence sending chills down the spine. He wore a dark red tank top that showcased his muscular build, paired with brown cargo pants and military boots. His strong posture and sharp jawline framed red eyes and spiky red hair. Curiosity mixed with fear prompted a question about his identity. The man responded with a sinister tone, declaring that the question was irrelevant since the boy was about to meet a grim fate. The fear of death twisted in the boy's stomach, igniting a sense of panic. The man introduced himself as Mike, a new recruit in the League of Villains, and revealed his love for fire and the screams of those who burned. Without warning, he dashed forward, flames propelling him faster. A beam of fire shot toward the boy's head, but he sidestepped just in time, delivering a swift kick to Mike's ribs, hearing a satisfying crack followed by a groan of pain. However, Mike retaliated, catching the boy's side and leaving a burning mark. With a gleeful laugh, Mike expressed his enjoyment of the fight, but the boy seized the moment, launching a powerful right hook that sent Mike crashing into the wall. Rushing to ensure he was unconscious, the boy found Mike was already gone. "Hey, looking for me?" Mike taunted, appearing bruised and bleeding but still standing. He revealed that the boy was the first to force him to use a dangerous aspect of his quirk. The boy's heart raced as he noticed Mike's hand heating up, flames beginning to engulf the area around them. Panic surged as he realized the danger. Desperation took over, and he spotted a window down the long hallway. With determination, he sprinted toward it, dodging debris and enduring minor cuts along the way. The heat from Mike's flames intensified, warping the air around him. He leaped through the window just in time. Meanwhile, a group of people stood at a safe distance from the burning building. Megan and Nino were among them, worried about Midoriya's fate. Conversations buzzed around them, expressing hope for the boy who had rushed into danger to save others. News reporters documented the scene, highlighting the heroic actions of a boy with messy black and green hair who had entered the inferno. As the building crumbled under the intense heat, Megan's heart sank at the thought of Midoriya being trapped inside. Nina's innocent question about his safety was met with a shaky reassurance from her mother, who believed in his heroism. Suddenly, a shout from the reporter caught their attention, noting a figure sprinting through the halls, moving away from the flames. 5 months had passed since the boy began his rigorous training at Dagoba Municipal Beach, where he cleaned up trash while working out. His routine included running until exhaustion, bodyweight exercises, and shadow sparring in the woods, pushing himself beyond his limits. Alongside his physical training, he studied for the entrance exam and discovered fascinating books about legendary martial artists who had mastered a technique called ki, a spiritual energy reliant on emotion and spirit strength. On the 6th month, an unsettling feeling washed over him as he returned home after his workout. To his shock, the apartment door stood wide open. Panic surged as he called for his mother while searching the house. Suddenly, a purple-black mist materialized, and a man emerged, wearing a lab coat. "Well, isn't it good to see you again, Izuku?" the man said, a sinister smile on his face. "Who are you? Where's my mom?" Izuku demanded, urgency lacing his voice. "Well, aren't you the impatient one?" the man replied, his tone dripping with mockery. They had her, and those last words struck hard. In a surge of anger, he launched himself at the man, landing a punch that echoed through the mist, sending him flying. He followed, ready for battle. He found himself in a dimly lit bar, scanning the room. One figure, made of mist and dressed in a bartender's suit, stood behind the counter. Another man, his face obscured by severed hands, loomed nearby, while a third figure lay unconscious on the floor. The last was a massive figure in a black suit and mask. He demanded to know where his mother was, his voice firm yet filled with urgency. The masked figure, introducing himself as All for One, acknowledged his potential, claiming he would be useful for their league of villains. Hisashi, his father, struggled to stand with a broken jaw, revealing that Inko would be held captive until he embraced villainy to repay a debt and succeed in their experiment. Suddenly, projectiles whizzed past him from the shadows. He turned to see 2 figures lurking, and he charged at them, dodging the attacks. One had purple scars on his face, while the other was a schoolgirl in a uniform. The scarred man cursed before unleashing blue flames from his palms. He narrowly avoided the flames, feeling a sting on his shoulder as he retaliated, striking the man hard enough to send him crashing through the wall. He then dodged knives from the girl, kicking her into the opposite wall. Fueled by desperation, he demanded to know his mother's whereabouts as he rushed at All for One, who seemed taken aback. Just as he anticipated a counterattack, All for One vanished, reappearing behind him. Before he could react, pain shot through his shoulder, and darkness began to close in. He caught a glimpse of his mother tied to a chair and called out to her, panic rising within him. He activated his technique, vanishing and appearing in front of her. He asked if she was okay, determined to free her. As he ripped the straps away, she stopped him, her tone unsettling. She expressed a twisted happiness in their current situation, suggesting they could be a family doing evil together. He urged her to snap out of it, but before he could lift her away, he felt a sharp pain in his side. She told him he would feel better once he became stronger and defeated All Might for them. Confused and hurt, he fell unconscious. When he awoke, he found himself in a dark room illuminated by a single light. Equipment for torture surrounded him, and he felt weak, as if drugged and strapped to a table. The sound of footsteps approached, and he struggled against his restraints. The door creaked open, revealing his mother, Hisashi, and All for One. All for One greeted him, announcing it was time to proceed. His mother reassured him that if he didn't struggle, it wouldn't hurt. He demanded to know what they had done to her. Hisashi coldly explained that they had turned her into a villain, altering her mind. Enraged, he vowed to take them down, but All for One merely promised that he would soon reunite with his mother if he complied. As All for One placed his hand on his head, darkness flooded his mind. He resisted, determined not to let them take his mother away. Days passed, filled with torment, until All for One decided to inflict mental pain instead. He called for Inko, asking what would happen to a human body when its blood was manipulated. In a weak voice, he pleaded for them to hurt him instead. All for One promised pain beyond anything he had experienced, and suddenly, his mother's body began to glow red as she screamed in agony. In horror, he begged them to stop, but before he could finish, her body exploded, showering the room in chaos. Overwhelmed by grief and rage, he felt a surge of power. All for One approached him again, placing his hand on his head, but he refused to give in. Frustrated, All for One prepared to use a new quirk, but before he could act, darkness enveloped him once more. When he came to, he floated in a void of darkness, a piercing pain in his head. Memories flooded back, and he found himself unable to move or speak. He watched helplessly as his body navigated through a scene of destruction, stepping over the fallen bodies of heroes and civilians. All for One stood before him, weakened but still alive. A girl with black hair called out to him, and his body rushed to her, lifting her in a tight embrace, tears flowing freely. The young man trembled, tears streaming down his face as he mourned the loss of his loved ones. He appeared older, perhaps 18 or 19, as memories flooded his mind, each one a painful reminder of his recent tragedy. He recalled the moment he lost his mother, the grief overwhelming him. He felt a voice trying to comfort him, urging him not to blame himself, but the pain was too great. He cried out in despair, pleading for his mother not to leave him, as the memories of his family slipped away once more. He remembered his time training under All Might, receiving his quirk, and the friendships he forged at UA with Class 1A and the teachers. He had grown close to Momo Yaoyorozu, and their bond blossomed into a relationship. He reflected on the trials they faced together, the USJ attack, the sports festival, internships, and summer camp. But everything changed during their third year when All for One appeared, with Tamura Shigaraki leading an army of Numus into battle. Now, he stood amidst the aftermath, witnessing the lifeless bodies of his classmates and pro-heroes scattered around him. Blood stained the ground, and he felt an intense rage boiling within. He questioned why he hadn't been stronger, why he couldn't protect them. In a moment of despair, he fell to the ground, pounding his fists against it. Suddenly, a blinding flash enveloped him, and he found himself in the streets, facing his classmates, who looked at him with fear. He felt a surge of power and anger, confronting Bakugo with a twisted sense of vengeance. He unleashed his fury, feeling a rush of satisfaction as he struck down his former friend. The fear in the eyes of his classmates only fueled his madness. He raged against them, blaming them for his transformation into a villain, for the shattered dreams of being a hero. In mere moments, he unleashed chaos, leaving them all behind. His mind spiraled into darkness, filled with self-loathing for the actions he had taken. He recalled moments from his past, how he had jumped off the school roof at Bakugo's urging, only to be teleported to a bar where he was approached by the League of Villains. He had initially resisted but ultimately succumbed to their influence, undergoing experiments that granted him a powerful quirk, leading to the destruction of countless lives, including his mother's. He questioned his reality, wondering if he was trapped in an endless cycle of pain and loneliness. The memories felt too real, as if he were living through each moment again. He stood before his mother's grave, expressing his sorrow and frustration. Despite his efforts to prove himself, he felt the weight of being labeled a villain. Yet, Momo remained a beacon of hope, believing in him when others did not. He recalled the bullying he endured, how his quirk had manifested in a catastrophic earthquake that claimed many lives. Despite being trained by All Might and gaining his quirk, he faced rejection from his peers. Only a few, including Momo, recognized the hero within him, while others saw him as a threat. His attempts to save lives were met with suspicion, even hostility from authorities. In the present, he felt the weight of despair pressing down on him. He was haunted by the voices of those who wished him harm, urging him to end his own suffering. Yet, Momo's image persisted in his mind, a reminder that he was not alone. A brilliant light engulfed him, revealing countless realities filled with the consequences of his actions. He felt the pain of loss, the burden of guilt, and the power surging within him. As he stood amidst the wreckage, he confronted All for One and his minions, determined to fight back. He remembered his journey, from being quirkless to discovering his true potential. He had fought valiantly during the USJ attack, unlocking a power within him that he never knew existed. Now, he faced an army of Numus, ready to protect those he cared about. He resolved to fight differently, acknowledging the long road he had traveled. He expressed his love for his friends, urging them not to give up on their dreams. He turned to All Might, asking him to watch over them. His heart was heavy with the weight of his choices, but he was ready to confront the darkness that threatened to consume him. All Might expressed his weakness, tears threatening to spill from his eyes as he spoke. He conveyed his desperation, pleading with Izuku, saying he couldn't live without him. Momo, filled with emotion, shouted her need for him. Izuku, with tears streaming down his face, explained that he had to make this sacrifice to save the world and urged Momo to take care of their child, expressing his regret at not being able to see him one last time. Momo insisted that he still could, but Izuku, with a bittersweet smile, bid farewell to his loved ones, placing 2 fingers on his forehead before teleporting into the midst of the villains. With a smile on his face, he declared it a goodbye. As he unleashed all his energy, a massive ball of light began to form, illuminating the area. Momo cried out in desperation, trying to reach him, but All Might restrained her, acknowledging that it was Izuku's decision, possibly the only choice left. The cries of his friends filled the air as the light grew brighter and larger, crackling with electricity and heat, creating a powerful wind that forced everyone to the ground. As he shouted his love for them, the explosion erupted, obliterating the villains and leaving a massive crater in the city, electrifying the area that had once been the battlefield. In the aftermath, a pale figure resembling Izuku appeared in the center of the crater. Momo, overwhelmed with grief, called out to him, but his body turned to ash and dissolved. The loss of a true hero resonated with everyone, even Bakugo shedding tears alongside Shoto. All Might reflected on Izuku's heroism, acknowledging his sacrifice to protect others, even from another world. The following day, Principal Nedzu summoned All Might and Midnight to his office. He expressed his gratitude for their presence and explained that they needed to decide who would be Izuku Midoriya's temporary guardian for a month until the UA dorms were ready. He chose them because Izuku had met both before. Midnight quickly volunteered to take care of him, and Nedzu happily confirmed the arrangement, instructing her to pick him up from the hospital and allowing him to retrieve some belongings from his home. Izuku felt a mix of awkwardness and gratitude when Midnight picked him up from the hospital. They went to his old house to gather his things. Midnight waited outside while Izuku entered his dusty room, filled with memories of his childhood and moments spent with his mother. He collected his notebooks, clothes, and a punching bag, reminiscing about the rescue missions they used to play. With teary eyes, he took one last look at his home before loading his belongings into Midnight's car. When she asked if he was okay, he assured her he was just lost in thought. Upon arriving at Midnight's apartment, Izuku was surprised by its size. Midnight welcomed him in with a smile, encouraging him to make himself at home. Grateful for her kindness, Izuku thanked her and expressed his doubt that any other hero would have taken him in. Midnight insisted he call her Namuri and asked if he was hungry. He agreed, and they shared a meal before heading to bed. Izuku fell asleep in his tank top and sweatpants, wishing her good night. In his dreams, Izuku found himself walking through dark streets covered in crimson liquid. Panic surged as he saw the same liquid on his hands. He was horrified to discover the corpses of his classmates and the looming figure of All for One, who held someone with spiky black hair. Desperation filled him as he witnessed blood pouring from her stomach, powerless to intervene. The scene shifted to a moment with Momo, but when he pulled away from their embrace, he saw her in pain, a hole in her stomach. Her tearful words echoed in his mind, and he felt a crushing guilt as her eyes closed. Awakening from the nightmare, Izuku gasped for air, drenched in sweat and filled with anger. He vowed to make All for One pay for hurting his loved ones. Donning training clothes, he rushed out of the apartment and headed to the Dagoba Municipal Beach, where he had previously cleaned up. After sprinting for what felt like an eternity, he arrived, breathing heavily and feeling the warmth of the sun on his back. Determined to train, he focused on his spirit energy, channeling it throughout his body until a white aura enveloped him. As he pushed out more energy, the ground trembled, and sand lifted into the air around him. Surprised by the surge of power, he shouted for more, combining his Limitbreaker with his ki. The resulting energy created a whirlwind, sending sand swirling around him as he embraced the strength within. My body remembered how to power up the beam. My thoughts were interrupted as I positioned my feet, right foot behind, left in front, and my hands held as if carrying an invisible ball. A small burst of energy formed in my hands, creating a light that grew larger as I concentrated on maintaining that form. The energy shot out through the gaps between my fingers, illuminating the space around me. My hands trembled from the power of the ball, which burned slightly against my skin. The energy solidified into a ball of plasma that filled both of my hands. I pushed my hands forward toward the sea, releasing a massive beam of compressed energy that shone brightly, lighting up the beach. The beam cut through the waves, evaporating them instantly as it reached out for miles. I stood there, breathing heavily, collapsing to my knees as I realized the limits of my power and my ki. I felt frustrated, knowing it wasn't enough. I had to train harder to save everyone. As I stood, my legs shook beneath me. I pushed energy beneath my feet, levitating above the ground. I was discovering new abilities with my ki and needed to learn everything I could. My body remembered what to do, but my time in different realities had made me forget much. The memories of those I cared about and the pain they endured because of me were etched in my mind. I fought against those thoughts as I flew through the night sky, gazing down at the twinkling lights below. After a final glance, I flew home. In the morning, I cleaned myself up at 5, went out to train, and returned by 8. I found myself cooking breakfast, something I never knew I could do. I made pancakes with eggs and bacon. Midnight entered, asking about the smell. I greeted her with excitement, sharing that it was breakfast. She expressed her gratitude, saying she didn't have to make breakfast for her but appreciated it. I set the table and enjoyed my meal before heading to my room to train some more. I wrapped my hands with boxing tape and began punching the bag with full force. For the past 30 minutes, it had been just me and my thoughts, which were harsh and accusatory. I felt the weight of my failures, the lives lost because of my weakness, and the loved ones I couldn't save. In a burst of frustration, I screamed and struck the punching bag so hard that it fell from its hinges and crashed into the wall. I stood there, panting and drenched in sweat, when Midnight rushed in, looking concerned. She asked if something had happened, and I nervously chuckled, assuring her I was just training. She warned me to be careful. It had been a month since Midnight took me in as a guardian, and we had grown close, developing a parent-child relationship. I had met several pro heroes during this time, either through Midnight's outings or their visits to our home. I mastered my ki and created various moves to defeat enemies. I had even stopped some low-level thugs at night, making my debut as the Limitbreaker. Many believed the Limitbreaker was gone, as it had been 4 months since my departure, and crime levels had risen. Now, I had a lot of work ahead of me. Midnight asked if I had everything for my first day at UA, and I confirmed with a smile. As I walked toward UA, my belongings were already transported to my dorm room. I paused at the gates, admiring them while contemplating my first step toward protecting my loved ones. I navigated the halls until I found Class 1A. I remarked to myself about the size of the door before sliding it open, stepping inside and feeling a wave of shock. I looked around and saw my classmates, many of whom were friends from different realities who had perished because of me. My gaze landed on Momo and my heart raced. It ached to go to her, to embrace her and share my burdens, but my body remained frozen. Momo noticed me and looked directly at me, her eyes filled with concern, which only intensified my emotions. Tears threatened to spill, and I realized this would be difficult to navigate as I made my way to my seat. Everyone headed to the changing rooms to put on their hero costumes. I opened my suitcase and discovered my suit was all black with red highlights covering its arms, legs, torso, and back. It was an armored prototype designed to block knives, split into parts for easy wear, torso, pants, gloves, combat shoes, and finally, a dark mask that covered my entire head, complete with a red visor, a filtration system for gases, and a communicator. Before I could change, Mineta shouted something inappropriate, drawing attention to himself. He excitedly announced he had found a hole from the previous generation that led to the heavens. Ida reprimanded him, emphasizing the importance of privacy, but Mineta continued, describing the girls in a way that made me uncomfortable. When I had enough, I placed my hand on his shoulder, squeezing it firmly to stop his antics and redirect his attention. The tension in the air was palpable as the protagonist expressed their frustration, warning that anyone who dared to sneak a glance would find themselves confined to the infirmary for the week. The intimidation was effective. Their opponent trembled in fear, tears welling in their eyes as they walked away to change. Unbothered by the whispers of some girls discussing the incident, the protagonist focused on sealing a hole in the wall by harnessing their ki, effectively melting the surrounding area. After changing, the protagonist left behind their mask, knowing it was meant to instill fear in villains. They stepped out into the fields, ready for the next instructions. All Might explained that they would be engaging in 2v2 battles, with one team designated as heroes and the other as villains. When it was time to randomly select teams, the protagonist found themselves paired with Yaoyorozu against Bakugo, who radiated a menacing aura, and Ida. Yaoyorozu complimented the protagonist's costume, expressing admiration. The protagonist returned the sentiment, noting how practical her costume was for her quirk. However, she revealed her insecurity, feeling that others misinterpreted her outfit as showing off. The protagonist reassured her, emphasizing that at least someone recognized her hard work, which flattered Yaoyorozu. As they prepared for the match, All Might announced a 5-minute countdown. The protagonist outlined a strategy, explaining that Bakugo would likely target them while Ida defended the bomb. They instructed Yaoyorozu to create an insulator cloth for her hands and feet before using it. Despite her concerns about the plan, the protagonist reassured her, expressing confidence in their ability to handle Bakugo. Once the match began, they raced through the halls, detecting Ida and the bomb on the 5th floor while Bakugo approached rapidly. The protagonist instructed Yaoyorozu on her next steps, advising her to be cautious with the key ball they had created together. As Bakugo launched an attack, the protagonist intercepted him, using their strength to minimize the explosion's impact on Yaoyorozu. They urged her to go for the bomb while they faced Bakugo alone. Bakugo's rage was palpable as he shouted insults, claiming the protagonist was a hindrance to his goals. The protagonist countered, expressing the pain of their past and the loneliness they felt. They revealed how Bakugo's actions had affected them deeply, yearning for a friend while feeling abandoned. In a moment of anger, the protagonist unleashed their strength, throwing Bakugo to the ground and preparing to strike. However, they hesitated, realizing they had only hit the floor beside him. As Bakugo lay unconscious, the protagonist felt a wave of despair wash over them. They wrapped Bakugo in tape and made their way to the 5th floor, where All Might announced the match's conclusion. Upon reaching the top, they found Ida barely standing and Yaoyorozu looking pleased with their success. The protagonist congratulated her, their eyes glistening with tears. Yaoyorozu noticed the tears and expressed concern, but the protagonist brushed it off. Just then, Bakugo appeared in the doorway, furious and ready to continue their confrontation. Ignoring All Might's attempts to intervene, Bakugo threatened the protagonist, pulling the pins from his gauntlets. In a split-second decision, the protagonist chose to shield Yaoyorozu and Ida from the impending explosion, bracing themselves for the impact. The explosion was deafening, and pain coursed through them. As the smoke cleared, the protagonist remained standing, locked in a defensive position, unable to move. My shirt was torn, exposing my body while my arms bled from the explosion, falling to my sides. My head throbbed as blood trickled down my face, obscuring my vision. I noticed Bakugo, who appeared frozen in shock. Behind me, Ida and Yaoyorozu were safe but visibly shaken. I managed to ask if they were okay, my voice strained with pain. I struggled to stay conscious, slowly approaching Yaoyorozu with tears in my eyes. My legs trembled, and my arms hung limply at my sides. I tried to express my relief to Momo, but before I could finish, I collapsed, darkness enveloping me. Before the final assault from Bakugo, everyone had been listening to the conversation between Izuku and Bakugo. Kirishima remarked that Bakugo should calm down, while others looked on in shock at Bakugo's harsh words. When Izuku began to speak, The group felt a wave of sadness as they learned about his lonely journey. He had walked the path of a hero alone, without parents or friends. Kirishima expressed admiration for Izuku's determination, noting that he never gave up on his dream even while quirkless. The girls were moved to tears by Izuku's heartfelt words. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when Izuku lashed out at Bakugo after he mentioned his parents. As Izuku sobbed, he shared heart-wrenching thoughts that resonated deeply with the girls. Todoroki reflected on the situation, realizing he was not alone in his struggles, but it felt even worse. It was a Sunday morning and there was no time for rest. I got out of bed, stretched with a satisfying yawn, took care of my morning routine, and dressed in casual clothes, dark blue relaxed fit jeans, a light green t-shirt, a dark green hoodie, and my signature red sneakers. After grabbing my wallet, I headed down to the common area to make breakfast, only to find it empty. I remembered it was early, around 6 a.m. I prepared a protein-rich meal while watching the news about recent villain activities. The reporter announced a dramatic drop in crime levels, raising questions about whether the heroes were responsible. I speculated that Shigaraki might be involved, planning something behind the scenes. The report also mentioned a vigilante known as Limitbreaker, who had been seen at crime scenes. Some admired him, while others were wary, with villains claiming that looking into his eyes felt like staring into death itself. Surprised, I finished my meal, turned off the TV, cleaned my dishes, and headed to work. After finishing my shift at the local cafe, where I worked as both a cook and a butler, I enjoyed the bustling atmosphere. I had become well known since starting about half a month ago, and I appreciated the attention from the mostly female clientele. I made sure to provide excellent service, which often left the women flustered. Business was thriving as word spread about my work. My next job involved hard labor, which I enjoyed as it contributed to my training while earning me extra cash. I tackled various tasks from demolishing buildings to rebuilding them. Later, I was invited to join my colleagues at a bar, but I politely declined. Instead, I went to a store to buy toys for kids. When I returned to the dorms around 4 p.m., everyone greeted me. Kirishima asked where I had been and what I was holding. I cheerfully explained that I had been working and showed him the toys. However, Bakugo suddenly shouted at me, mocking my choice to buy children's toys. I felt anger surge within me as I defended the toys, insisting they were meant to bring joy to children. Kirishima tried to intervene, but Bakugo unleashed an explosive blast, which I shielded with my back, tearing my shirt. I expressed my frustration, emphasizing how hard I had worked to earn money for these gifts, and how Bakugo's actions were ruining something that could make children happy. I walked past him, determined to stand my ground. Bakugo's taunts only fueled my anger, and I turned to face him, feeling a surge of power within me. The building trembled as I gathered my energy, electricity crackling around me. I raised my fists, but I hesitated, remembering Nisa's advice. It took all my strength to suppress my rage. Bakugo continued to provoke me, questioning my courage. I confronted him about the unfair treatment of quirkless individuals, expressing my frustration over the discrimination we faced. I acknowledged my desire to fight back but reminded him that I could not risk expulsion. I had been punished for defending myself while he faced no consequences for his actions. I locked eyes with him, feeling the intensity of our emotions. "What's your point, Deku?" Midoriya expressed his thoughts, questioning the difference between himself and his classmate. They both aspired to be heroes, but for different reasons. Midoriya noted that his classmate had a different attitude and a quirk, while he did not. He pondered why he was often overlooked while others treated him poorly. In his view, true heroes were becoming scarce in society, and while quirks were seen as a new beginning for humanity, he believed they only brought trouble. He longed for a time when people were quirkless. As he walked back to his room, carrying toys, he noticed his classmates staring at him in silence. He changed into a gray shirt, grabbed a suitcase filled with money he had earned and the toys, and made his way to the common area. The atmosphere was tense, as everyone seemed unsure of what to say. On his way to one of the orphanages, he sensed someone following him. The energy felt familiar. He called out to Yaoyorozu, inviting her to join him for a stroll. She quickly appeared, eager to accompany him. At the orphanage, Midoriya donated the money and toys for the children. One of the kids suggested they play heroes and villains, and Midoriya, with a playful tone, declared himself the strongest villain. The children rallied together, pretending to be heroes, determined to defeat him. As they played, Midoriya's smile was genuine, a sight that warmed Momo's heart. She thought about how he resembled the father figure she wished she had. She realized that if others saw this side of him, they would find him charming, strong, caring, and a good cook. Her daydream was interrupted by a staff member who commented on how lucky she was to know someone like Midoriya. Flustered, Momo stammered that they were just friends from school. The lady continued to praise Midoriya, noting his kindness and dedication to helping others, urging Momo not to take him for granted. As they prepared to leave, the children expressed their gratitude, wishing him luck. One boy, Zack, hesitated and asked Midoriya if he could become a hero with a weak quirk. Midoriya knelt down, ruffled Zack's hair, and encouraged him not to give up on his dreams. He shared his own experience of being quirkless and how determination could lead to greatness. He inspired Zack to believe in himself. Momo admired Midoriya's caring nature and how he devoted his time to helping those in need. She found him endearing as he played with the children, and she felt a warmth in her heart that she couldn't quite understand. Back at the dorms, everyone noticed the cheerful expressions on Momo and Izuku's faces. After a brief change into training clothes, Mina suggested a tour of the boys' rooms, much to the excitement of the girls. Midoriya, however, declined the invitation, stating he needed to train but offered them permission to check his room. As the girls approached Midoriya's room, they opened the door to find a simple yet organized space. Books and scattered papers filled the table, and a well-used punching bag hung in the corner. Kirishima, intrigued, approached the punching bag and threw a punch, only to wince at the pain that followed. The girls looked around, with Mina excitedly rummaging through the drawers, imagining how attractive Midoriya would look in some of his clothes. The atmosphere was filled with curiosity and anticipation as they explored the room, eager to learn more about their classmate. Momo felt a flush of warmth on her cheeks as she approached the table filled with study materials. The books contained notes on how Izuku could maximize his efforts to earn money for the orphanage, leaving him with little for himself. She reflected on his dedication, noting how he prioritized the orphanage over his own needs and various charities. She had seen him at the orphanage earlier, playing with the children and wearing a genuine smile, embodying the perfect father figure. As she spoke, the other girls expressed a mix of jealousy and admiration. They exclaimed their interest in Izuku, but Momo felt a sense of pride in his commitment. Kirishima, rummaging through a case under Izuku's bed, exclaimed about the amount of money he found. Momo pleaded with him to respect Izuku's hard work, and Kirishima acknowledged the importance of Izuku's determination. While leaving, Momo noticed a notebook partially hidden beneath the clutter of books and papers. Curiosity piqued, she cleared the mess and retrieved the plain black notebook, which she recognized as Izuku's journal. Flipping through its pages, she discovered it contained his thoughts since he was 4 years old. The entries revealed his loneliness, with only his mother by his side. Momo recalled Izuku's interactions with Bakugo and realized his parents were no longer present. The journal was filled with training plans, and she felt a pang of sympathy for him. When Momo returned to the common area, she was greeted by Mina, who playfully questioned her delay. Just then, the building shook, and screams echoed from the training field. They rushed outside to find Izuku on his knees, panting heavily. Sparks of electricity crackled around him, and the ground was torn up as if something had pulled it apart. Kirishima asked what had happened, and Izuku, gasping for breath, replied that it was just training. Momo expressed her concern, urging him not to overexert himself. Izuku looked into her eyes, his determination evident as he declared his need to work harder to protect those he loved. Momo felt a warmth in his gaze, sensing that he wanted to protect her specifically. Later, Izuku was in his room, reflecting on his training. He felt the weight of additional shackles and knew he could push himself further. He considered whether emotions could be the key to his growth or if temporarily losing one of his senses might amplify the others. After showering and dressing, he headed to the common area to prepare a meal, expecting it to be quiet at that hour. To his surprise, the kitchen was empty. As he cooked, he sensed someone watching him. It was Momo, who expressed her admiration for his selflessness. She voiced her concern about his intense training and questioned why he was so dedicated to helping others at the expense of his own well-being. Izuku, finishing his meal, sighed and explained that his actions stemmed from a deep desire to protect his loved ones. He recounted the pain of his past, including the loss of his mother and the bullying he endured for being quirkless. As he shared his story, emotions overwhelmed him, and he began to cry. Momo comforted him, assuring him that his mother would be proud of him for surviving. Izuku expressed his struggles with the memories of his past, feeling haunted by visions of failure and loss. Momo listened intently, offering her support as he revealed his feelings of inadequacy. He shared how the memories of alternate realities showed him both joy and sorrow, and how, despite everything, he had loved her in every version of his life. Momo held him close, reassuring him that he was not alone and that their bond could help him heal. The joy I felt upon seeing Momo was overwhelming, even though I didn't know her personally. My heart had its own ways of expressing emotions. I missed her deeply. As I pulled away, I gazed into her beautiful eyes, which were glistening with tears. I gently cupped her cheeks with both hands, noticing her shock and the intense blush that spread across her face. The warmth radiated from her, and I instinctively drew her closer, sharing a kiss. Our lips met softly, and as we closed our eyes, our tongues danced together, with me taking the lead. After about 30 seconds, we parted, a thin line of saliva connecting us as we caught our breaths. I confessed my feelings, telling her that I loved her with all my heart, which left her flustered. She stammered her response, admitting her love for me as well. We embraced once more, but as the reality of the moment sank in, she dashed away, her cheeks still flushed. I thought to myself that I would see her soon. From Momo's perspective, she couldn't believe what had just happened. Although we weren't very close, it felt as if we had known each other forever. The kiss had been passionate, and she felt as if she had melted in his embrace. He was both hot and cute, and she craved more of him. But she reminded herself to focus on the task at hand. Despite the kiss, she realized she might be falling in love. As the school year began, we were informed about a trip to the USJ, which excited everyone except me. A sense of foreboding settled in my stomach. On the bus, while everyone chatted, I found myself lost in thought, watching the landscape blur by. Tsuyu called out to me, breaking my reverie. I apologized for spacing out and listened as she asked how I had become so strong despite being quirkless. I explained that sheer will and determination could lead to great achievements. I shared my belief that quirkless individuals could push beyond their limits through training, while those with quirks faced their own limitations. I also mentioned my ability to control my ki, the spiritual energy that needed to be balanced with physical strength. I had been working hard to enhance my abilities, and I noticed my classmates were taken aback by my explanation. I realized I had rambled on and apologized, but Kirishima reassured me that my technique was impressive. I encouraged him to see the value in hard work rather than just flashy quirks. Upon arriving at the USJ, everyone donned their costumes, while I wore my PE kit for practical reasons. As we entered with Aizawa, I felt a menacing aura in the air, sensing that villains were plotting an attack. My instincts heightened, I scanned the surroundings. Suddenly, purple warps appeared in the center of the USJ, and an army of villains emerged, led by 4 prominent figures. Shigaraki announced their intentions to kill All Might and take someone with them. Hisashi's cheerful greeting made my stomach churn, and I shouted his name, drawing attention from my classmates. I warned everyone to stay back, instructing number 13 to handle the evacuation. Aizawa leaped into action, erasing the quirks of the long-range attackers. Number 13 urged us to head for the exit, but it was too late. Kurogiri appeared before us. He introduced himself casually, revealing that they had their sights set on me. In an instant, everyone was warped to different locations, and I found myself in the center of the USJ, surrounded by Shigaraki, Hisashi, Kurogiri, and a strange creature. Low-level villains closed in on me, grinning menacingly. Shigaraki treated the situation like a game, instructing his minions not to let my health drop to 0. I quickly stood up, powering up for combat. Excitement surged through me as I took a fighting stance. The villains charged at me, using a variety of quirks. I swiftly neutralized the long-range attackers with precise strikes, leaving them incapacitated. With the close-range attackers remaining, I gathered energy in my hand and unleashed a powerful blast that knocked them out without causing serious harm. Facing the 4 main villains, I felt a surge of determination. I was ready to confront them for their past and future actions. Before Shigaraki could finish his sentence, I struck him and Hisashi with a powerful punch that sent them flying. I turned my attention to Kurogiri, who attempted to warp away but found himself pinned down by my grip on a piece of his armor. I asked him where he thought he was going, ready to take a stand against the threat before me. Izuku took his time surveying his surroundings, noticing Aizawa engaged with Shigaraki and Hisashi. Aizawa struggled against the 2 villains while fending off the lesser foes with his disintegrated elbow. Shigaraki launched sneak attacks, timing his moves with precision, while Hisashi unleashed fire breath from a distance, which was occasionally erased. Izuku quickly incapacitated Kurogiri by slamming him into the ground and took down the minor villains, then stood beside Aizawa. He offered his assistance, but Aizawa insisted he should have fled. Izuku explained that they had been interrupted by being warped there and had lost sight of the others, but most of the small villains were now down. He warned Aizawa to be cautious of the creature. As Izuku observed the lifeless creature, Shigaraki taunted him, acknowledging his growth since their last encounter. He mentioned that Izuku could have been a formidable Numu, even a perfect one. Shigaraki then commanded the Numu to attack Aizawa. The creature's gaze locked onto Aizawa, and everything seemed to freeze. Izuku's instincts kicked in, and he pushed Aizawa out of the way, taking a powerful hit that sent him crashing into the forest district, breaking through multiple trees. The impact left him feeling as if he had been struck by a tank, and he struggled to regain his senses as his vision began to fade. Meanwhile, the others made their way to the stairs, witnessing Aizawa and Izuku confronting Shigaraki and Hisashi. Kaminari urged everyone to follow Aizawa's order to escape, while Uraraka expressed concern about Aizawa's injuries and the ominous creature. Suddenly, Shigaraki commanded the Numu to attack Aizawa, and the students gasped as they saw Aizawa being overwhelmed. Shigaraki mocked Aizawa, suggesting they could eliminate more students in front of him. Izuku, battered and bloodied, struggled to stand, his shirt torn and revealing severe bruises. Despite his condition, he declared that Shigaraki would pay for his actions. Determined to fight back, Izuku activated his Limitbreaker, unleashing a surge of energy that shook the USD. The electricity coursed through him, lifting floor tiles into the air. He challenged the creature, but when he collided with it he was pushed back, realizing he was still outmatched. Undeterred, he launched a furious assault, using his ki to strike the creature, but it absorbed the blows with ease. Shigaraki taunted him, revealing the Numu's shock absorption ability. Izuku resolved to keep attacking, hoping to wear the creature down or stall for help. He fought fiercely, dodging and countering the creature's strikes, creating shockwaves that cracked the floor beneath them. However, after a few intense minutes, fatigue set in, and a powerful punch sent him crashing to the ground, creating a crater. As he lay there, struggling to rise, he felt the creature approach, delivering relentless blows that pushed him deeper into the ground. Izuku found himself in a pool of his own blood, feeling hopeless as Shigaraki turned his attention to Momo, threatening her safety. Fueled by desperation, Izuku fought against his own limitations, pushing himself to his feet with every ounce of strength he had left. Shigaraki mocked him, questioning why he continued to fight despite the overwhelming odds. Izuku declared that he would protect his friends and family with every breath he had left, vowing to defeat Shigaraki and his allies. His determination ignited a spark of hope among his classmates, who watched in awe at his resilience. Izuku focused all his energy into a single attack, determined to resist the strength within him. He shut down his senses, blocking out everything around him. His hearing faded, his sense of touch disappeared, and the taste and smell of blood vanished. His vision shifted to shades of black and white. He sought the source of his power, each step taking him deeper into that warm, powerful feeling. The Numu approached him slowly, while Shigaraki and Hisashi appeared to be reveling in the moment. Izuku felt the weight of multiple shackles binding him, restricting his ability to unleash his true potential. He pleaded silently for help, desperate to access the power he sensed within. As he pushed himself further, he felt something within him begin to crack, a breaking point that threatened to overwhelm him. The shackles trembled, and he realized there were more than he could control. In that moment, a bright light shone from within, a shackle that stood out from the rest. Voices echoed in his mind, warning him of the danger of using this power, but he refused to abandon his friends. He resolved to fight until the very end, and the voices acknowledged his determination. As the bright shackle shattered, a massive surge of energy erupted from him, breaking free of the restraints and enveloping his body. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced, pure power coursing through him. However, the intensity of this energy brought immense pain, as if his body was being torn apart. He screamed, feeling his muscles contract violently, and blood flowed from his body as if it were being sliced open. Despite the agony, he knew he had to act quickly. With a fierce determination, he unleashed a powerful beam at the Numu, which retaliated by preparing its own attack. The collision created a tremendous sonic boom, sending everyone nearby flying and damaging the surroundings. The Numu struggled to maintain its footing, its fist burning and regenerating rapidly. Shigaraki shouted in frustration, realizing the creature might not withstand Izuku's assault. Izuku, despite the pain, pressed on, noticing the Numu weakening. He thought that its regeneration could not keep up with the force of his attack. As the Numu fell to its knees, the beam engulfed it, and the screeches echoed around them. Eventually, Izuku ran out of energy, his body collapsing but still standing, hands at his sides. He saw the Numu unconscious, and while Shigaraki was filled with rage and disbelief, Izuku found solace in the sight of his classmates, unharmed despite the chaos. He locked eyes with Momo, who appeared to be crying. With his blurry vision, he silently conveyed his feelings to her. Shigaraki, furious, shouted threats at Izuku, who could only watch as his body felt like a lifeless shell. Just then, the door to the USJ was blown open, and heroes rushed in, led by Ida and All Might. All Might, lacking his usual smile, urged Shigaraki to retreat, realizing the urgency of the situation. Hisashi, still in shock, dragged Shigaraki away. Izuku, with his last breaths, called out to Hisashi, expressing his hope that he would find happiness, feeling darkness closing in around him. In the aftermath, everyone stood in disbelief at the transformed scene. The teachers found their students near the stairs, with Aizawa and number 13 injured and several villains incapacitated. Izuku stood bloodied and broken, yet somehow still upright. Momo rushed to him, pressing her face against his chest, desperate for a heartbeat. She cried out, recalling their shared memories and pleading for him to return to her. As she held him tightly, she felt a faint heartbeat begin to thrum again, igniting her hope. In Izuku's mind, he floated in an abyss of darkness, hearing Momo's voice calling for him. He recognized her love but felt the pull of his own fate. A blinding light appeared, revealing a figure. It was his mother, who reassured him that he had done his best. She acknowledged Momo's feelings for him and asked if he was ready to give up. Izuku felt a deep sense of loneliness and despair. He had missed his mother and felt utterly alone, struggling to find the strength to continue. His mother had reassured him, expressing her desire to see him grow and have a family of his own. She reminded him that he still had a long journey ahead, and she would be waiting for him. But just as he reached out to her, darkness enveloped him. When Izuku opened his eyes, he found himself staring at a white ceiling. The scent of disinfectants filled the air, indicating he was either in the hospital or in Recovery Girl's room. He tried to move but found himself unable to do so. As he turned his head, he recognized the familiar surroundings of Recovery Girl's office. The door slid open and Recovery Girl entered, her expression a mix of concern and sympathy. Izuku immediately asked about his classmates and the aftermath of the attack. He was desperate to know if anyone had been seriously injured, especially Aizawa. Recovery Girl reassured him that everyone was in good condition but then delivered devastating news. She explained that he had been paralyzed from the neck down due to the severity of his injuries during the fight. Izuku felt a wave of shock wash over him. He had returned to this state, unable to feel anything. Recovery Girl informed him that arrangements had been made for him to be taken to a medical facility for people with paralysis. Left alone with his thoughts, he felt a surge of determination. He refused to give up, shouting at his body to move, vowing to prove everyone wrong. A week had passed since the USJ attack, and Class 1A was anxiously awaiting news about Izuku's condition. Aizawa entered the classroom, bandaged and weary. He informed the class that Izuku had sacrificed his body to save them all and that he would not be returning, having been diagnosed with paralysis. The news hit the class hard, especially Momo, who was overwhelmed with emotion. She expressed her frustration and anger at the unfairness of the situation, lamenting how Izuku had always faced cruelty despite his heroism. Suddenly, heavy footsteps approached, and the door swung open. Izuku, with his black hair highlighted by green, stood in the doorway, his bright green eyes filled with determination. He declared that he would not be counted out, despite his struggles. Momo rushed to him, tears of joy streaming down her face. They shared a heartfelt moment, and as they embraced, the class erupted in cheers, celebrating Izuku's return. Aizawa expressed his gratitude for Izuku's bravery, and Izuku humbly stated that he had done it to protect his family. Izuku was puzzled by his unexpected recovery, attributing it to his love for Momo. Just then, multiple teachers entered the classroom, astonished to see him. All Might approached, but Izuku interrupted him, attributing his strength to love. Despite the pain coursing through his body, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was determined to face the upcoming sports festival, even if he was not in peak condition. Aizawa reluctantly agreed to give him time to train. Later, All Might requested a private conversation with Izuku. He acknowledged Izuku's sacrifices and expressed his desire for him to become the next symbol of peace by inheriting his quirk. However, Izuku firmly rejected the offer, stating that he wanted to prove himself without relying on someone else's power. He walked away, determined to show the world that he could be a hero in his own right. Midoriya felt a surge of determination as he reflected on All Might's words. All Might had acknowledged him as a potential successor, recognizing his strength, both physical and mental. The weight of that acknowledgement filled Midoriya with a mix of pride and pressure. He knew he had to train harder to reach that level of power, but something felt off within him, a strange sensation that wasn't just from the lingering pain of his recent injuries. After his conversation with All Might, Midoriya walked through the halls of UA and noticed a group of students blocking the exit for his class. Bakugo, filled with anger, confronted the group, declaring that they were there to scout the survivors of the villain attack. He challenged them to step aside, threatening them with his explosive quirk. Shinso, with a bored yet bold tone, responded, declaring a rivalry against Class 1A, suggesting that they would replace one of them in the upcoming sports festival. Midoriya, wanting to defuse the tension, spoke up, expressing his eagerness to compete and encouraging everyone to give their best. Kirishima, impressed by Midoriya's bravery, supported him, while Bakugo seethed with rage at the response. Tetsu, another student from Class 1B, boldly declared his own rivalry, but Midoriya reminded them that the experience of facing a villain was terrifying and not something to take lightly. He nervously laughed, feeling the weight of his injuries as he leaned against the wall for support. Bakugo, frustrated, vowed to prove himself at the sports festival, while Kirishima stepped in to defend Midoriya, pointing out his injuries. Midoriya thanked Kirishima, admitting he wasn't ready for a confrontation. They returned to their dorms, and while others chatted happily, Midoriya struggled to cook for himself, his hands shaking and his body sore. Despite his efforts, he managed to prepare a meal that wasn't too bad, though it fell short of his usual standards. After a brief conversation with his classmates, Midoriya stumbled to his room, feeling drained, and fell asleep almost immediately. In his dreams, he found himself in an abyss, surrounded by a surge of power. Voices he recognized spoke to him, expressing their hope for his growth. Confused, he demanded to know who they were and what was happening to him, but they urged him to figure it out on his own. Waking up, Midoriya recalled the dream and pondered how to understand the changes in his body. He prepared for the day, showering and examining his reflection, noting the scars from his battle with the Numu. The sight reminded him of the risks he took in pushing his limits. Just as he was about to leave the bathroom, a sudden pain shot through his head, causing him to stumble. As the pain subsided, he noticed his vision flickering, making it difficult to focus. Struggling to regain control, he caught a whiff of pancakes cooking and realized he could almost taste them. After some effort, he managed to calm himself and control his senses. Feeling somewhat relieved, he dressed in his training clothes and headed to the common area, where many students were enjoying breakfast. Surprised to find he was the first to wake up, he greeted everyone cheerfully. Kirishima acknowledged him, surprised by his early rise. Midoriya, determined to improve his cooking skills, made his way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. As he cooked, he focused on doing his best, sitting next to Momo when he finished. She asked how he was feeling, and he appreciated her concern, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Not bad, but my hands still felt a bit rusty, though that wasn't a problem. After finishing my meal and washing my dish, I was about to head out for training when Momo stopped me. She expressed her concern, asking if I was sure I wanted to train in my condition. I reassured her that I would be fine, reminding her that after everything I had been through, a little workout wouldn't do any harm. I leaned in for a kiss, which she returned, and we shared a moment together. She advised me to be careful, and I nodded in agreement. At the gym, I lifted weights that felt surprisingly light, but the pain was intense, pushing me to work even harder. I moved on to the punching bag, sweat dripping down my face and soaking into my hoodie. As I continued, I noticed my hoodie fitting tighter and then loosening again. Curious, I took it off and saw my muscles expanding and contracting, a strange sight. I muttered to myself that my body might be adjusting to my new limits, feeling the odd sensations of my muscles shifting. Despite the discomfort, I pressed on, and when I finally stopped, I could see the difference. My body was more muscular yet still lean, with more defined outlines. My clothes were now snug against my frame. After finishing my training routine, the pain began to subside. I walked back to my room to take a shower and prepare for my jobs, noticing that the common area was empty, likely because everyone else was training. Once I showered, I glanced at my reflection, surprised at how much more ripped I had become. I realized I might need to buy a new butler's suit and other clothes to fit my new physique. After getting dressed in my now tight clothes, I grabbed my wallet and headed to the mall. As I walked through the mall, I felt the stares of others, wondering if they thought I was showing off in my fitted attire. I managed to find a butler's suit that fit perfectly, along with some casual clothes. Dressed in my butler's suit and carrying shopping bags, I made my way to the cafe, where my colleagues were taken aback by my transformation. They exclaimed in surprise at how much I had grown in just a week. I explained, somewhat nervously, that I had unlocked some sort of secret power boost, which left everyone in shock. As we began working, I noticed a change in how customers interacted with me, especially the women, who seemed flustered when I walked by. I greeted one customer warmly, but she was so taken aback that she momentarily lost her words. Suddenly she recognized me, and before I knew it, she jumped up and hugged me tightly, causing some jealousy among the other girls nearby. She expressed how much she missed me and asked how I had been. I told her I was fine and mentioned that Bakugo hadn't shared that I was in the same class at UA and living in the dorms. She was surprised to hear this and wanted to know how I had become so tall and muscular. I laughed and promised we could catch up after my shift. Once my shift ended, I approached Mitsuki, suggesting we go for a walk since I had an hour before my next job. She agreed, and we strolled through the park, enjoying each other's company. I treated us to ice cream, and after a delightful time, I had to say goodbye. We parted ways and I headed to my next job. At my labor job, my coworkers were equally astonished by my appearance. They commented that I looked like an adult now. I was invited out for drinks with them and our boss, where we shared stories and laughter. My boss asked if I had a girlfriend, mentioning he had a daughter my age at UA. When I confirmed that I did, he brightened up and shared that her name was Momo Yayarozu. I was taken aback and coughed a bit, but assured him I was fine. I stood up, introduced myself properly, and revealed that I was indeed his daughter's boyfriend. His reaction was one of surprise and joy, and he pulled me into a friendly embrace, expressing happiness that his daughter had found someone like me. After a bit of celebration, we said our goodbyes, and I made my way back to the dorms, feeling a little tipsy from the drinks. As I entered, my classmates noticed me immediately. Kirishima asked if I had been drinking, and I stammered a bit, admitting we had been celebrating. He then pointed out my new height and physique, drawing more attention. I tried to explain that my body was just adjusting to new limits. Momo, however, was not pleased. She confronted me about drinking, and I tried to defend myself, saying it was all in celebration. I could feel the tension rising as she pressed for details, and I called out for help from the others, but they left me to face her alone. Just then Momo's phone rang and she answered it, only to hear her mother on the other end questioning why I was drunk. After the call, she looked at me, and I tried to explain that it wasn't my intention. She hugged me tightly, expressing her happiness that her father approved of me, but there was still more to discuss. She expressed her frustration in a menacing tone, her aura intense as she confronted him about his drinking habits. Momo walked him back to his room after scolding him, gently placing him on his bed. She reminded him not to drink too much next time, to which he replied with a smile, insisting he wasn't that drunk and that others were worse. Momo sighed, unsure of what to do with him, but found him amusingly handsome and cute in that moment. As they shared a moment, he moved closer, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, leading to a tender kiss. They lost themselves in the kiss, breaking apart only when they needed air, a small connection lingering between them. He lifted her, holding her by her legs, and placed her back down on the bed. He found himself above her, gently holding her hands above her head. They kissed again, and he playfully left soft marks on her neck, eliciting a blush from her. She encouraged him to continue, and he promised to make it worth her while. They shared another kiss, and he slowly removed his shirt, revealing his toned physique, which she admired. As their kisses deepened, he caressed her gently, causing her to react to his touch. He continued to explore, making her gasp with delight. He teased her further, and she responded with eagerness, urging him to keep going. The atmosphere was charged with excitement as they shared NTMT moments, both feeling the thrill of their connection. He removed her jeans, revealing her excitement, and they continued to share their affection, both lost in the moment. Their chemistry was undeniable, and they reveled in the closeness they had developed. Momo leaned into him, feeling safe and cherished as they embraced. As they continued to explore their feelings for each other, the room was filled with warmth and laughter. They shared playful banter, enjoying the light-heartedness of the moment, and both felt a deepening bond that transcended their initial intentions. The night unfolded with a sense of adventure and discovery as they navigated their feelings and the excitement of being together. "I'm losing," she thought, as the sensations overwhelmed her. The passion between them intensified, and she felt herself reaching another peak. They shifted positions, and she found herself on top, moving rhythmically. He held her waist, guiding her movements as she lost herself in the moment. As the intensity built, he warned her that he was close, but she surprised him by leaning in for a kiss, locking herself against him while continuing to move. She playfully expressed her desire to keep him close, and he felt himself giving in to the overwhelming pleasure. Afterward, they lay together, her body relaxing against his. She whispered her affection, and he reciprocated, pulling the blanket over them as they drifted off to sleep. The next morning, he woke up to find her peacefully sleeping beside him. He kissed her forehead before quietly getting out of bed to take care of his morning routine. When he returned, she was waking up, rubbing her eyes. He greeted her warmly, and as she tried to stand, her legs wobbled, prompting him to catch her gently. He reminded her to take it easy after the previous day's events, and she agreed, reflecting on how beautiful it had been. He hesitated, worried about the possibility of her being pregnant, but she reassured him that she had taken precautions. He felt relieved, and she laughed lightly at his reaction. As they talked about the future, She expressed that she wouldn't mind having a baby with him when they were older, and he smiled brightly at the thought. After she went to the bathroom, he changed into the training clothes he had bought the day before. He asked if she would be okay alone, and she assured him she would be. He headed down to the common area, where he prepared breakfast for both of them. When she finally made her way to the table, she complimented the aroma of the food. They enjoyed their meal together, and soon their friends began to arrive. After finishing, he announced his intention to train and waved goodbye to her. She called out to him, stopping him in his tracks, and leaned in for a kiss, expressing her eagerness to repeat their earlier connection. He felt a rush of warmth and playfully responded, teasing her in return. She encouraged him to go, reminding him not to keep her waiting. At the training grounds, he spent hours trying to activate his Limitbreaker, but nothing seemed to work. Frustrated, he dropped to his knees, questioning why he couldn't access his power. In a moment of desperation, he resolved to push through the barriers holding him back. He stood firm, feeling a surge of energy building within him. The ground trembled as he unleashed his power, creating a chaotic scene around him. But just as he felt he was reaching his limit, a wave of pain hit him, reminiscent of the attack at USJ. He collapsed, his vision fading to black. Suddenly, he found himself surrounded by bright light and the sound of multiple voices. They introduced themselves as the Limitbreakers, explaining that he had surprised them by surviving the full force of their power. They revealed that he was not yet ready to wield this strength fully, as it typically took years for someone to adapt to it. They offered him a choice: to lock away most of the power to restore his previous abilities or to keep it unlocked and see how his body would adapt. After considering his options, he chose to keep the power unlocked, eager to see the difference it would make in his journey. As the voices wished him luck, he felt a sense of determination. He woke up to the bright morning sun, feeling sore but ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I looked around and saw the floor disintegrated all around me, the fake buildings crumbled to dust, scattered throughout the entire training ground. I wondered what my full power would be like once I could control it. As I made my way to the dorms, I walked through the doors and saw everyone eating breakfast. Momo looked up at me with concern and asked where I had been, noting that I hadn't returned the previous day. I assured her that I was fine, explaining that I had been training and had passed out. Her expression relaxed. Suddenly, the door burst open, drawing our attention. All Might and Aizawa entered. All Might greeted us and asked if anyone had used the ground beta. I felt a jolt of surprise at his question. Kirishima asked if there was a problem, to which Aizawa replied sarcastically that someone had destroyed the entire training ground and they wanted to find out who. Hesitantly, I raised my hand, admitting that it was me. Both Aizawa and All Might looked shocked. Aizawa asked how I had managed to grow so tall and strong, and why I had destroyed the training ground. I explained that after unlocking my full potential following the USJ attack, my body was still adapting to my new power, which I couldn't fully control yet. I had been frustrated during my training, which led to the incident. I needed to give my body time to adjust. My classmates and teachers were taken aback by my revelation. All Might reassured me that they would fix the training ground and inquired if I would still participate in the sports festival. I affirmed that I never go back on my word, which made him smile. After they left, my friends bombarded me with questions about my power and expressed concern over my inability to control it. Once things quieted down, I prepared my breakfast and headed out to train, thinking that I would just have to wait and keep training. Time skipped to the sports festival. We were in our PE kits, waiting in the holding area to be called. Over the past 2 weeks, I had been busy with work and visiting the orphanage, where the kids were amazed at how tall I had grown. I had also met Momo's parents, who seemed to like me, especially her father. Momo and I had gone on a few dates, which made us both happy. During this time, my hair had turned black and become spiky, but I also felt pain in my lower back and throughout my body, as if my blood was burning. As I chatted with Momo and the others, Todoroki interrupted me. He stated bluntly that he believed he was stronger than I was, shocking everyone except me and Bakugo, who smirked, sensing something behind Todoroki's words. Kirishima protested, but I reassured him that it was fine. I asked Todoroki if this was a declaration of rivalry. He acknowledged it but warned me not to expect to win, as he intended to come out on top. Momo defended me, but I stopped her, giving her a reassuring smile. I told Todoroki that I welcomed the rivalry and encouraged him to give it his all. I extended my hand for a handshake, but he walked away. Bakugo shouted a warning to watch my back as he followed Todoroki. When we were announced to head out into the arena, I spotted someone I missed midnight. I waved at her and she noticed, lighting up with a genuine smile. My classmates looked at me curiously, especially Mineta, who seemed both envious and intimidated. I chuckled nervously, holding my hands up in a gesture of defeat. Midnight announced Bakugo as the representative of our school to make a speech. He approached the podium with a smirk and boldly declared that he would be number one, causing an uproar among the classes. Kirishima praised him, while others scolded him for his arrogance. Bakugo pointedly addressed me, claiming I was just a stepping stone on his path to the top. As the obstacle race was announced, we prepared in the cramped tunnel. I thought about how tight it would be once the race began, especially with Todoroki likely planning something. I asked Momo if she wanted my help, but she declined, wanting to prove her worth. I nodded in understanding. When the signal went off, I sprinted across the wall, my senses heightened. I leaped off the wall, running over the shoulders of my classmates. I sensed something cold, realizing Todoroki had blocked the entrance with ice. I quickly maneuvered through a gap and slid down, accelerating past my classmates. The ground was slippery and I crouched down, focusing on my senses. I felt the floor beneath my feet, adjusted my vision to spot the best paths, and tuned my hearing to locate my competitors. I calmed myself and launched off the ground, using the bits of ice to propel myself forward. I quickly caught up to Todoroki, who was visibly frustrated. I noticed large robots towering over us, and I saw Todoroki freezing them, but they were left in unbalanced positions, which motivated me to run even faster. An announcement from Present Mic echoed in the arena, but Izuku Midoriya was too focused on the task at hand to pay attention. He sprinted toward the falling robots, determined to navigate through their legs in time. Present Mic's voice rang out, announcing that Izuku was heading straight for the falling zero-pointer. Gasps filled the air as spectators watched in shock, thinking he was taking a reckless risk. As the robots crashed down, Izuku seized the moment and slid beneath them. The loud bang of the robots hitting the ground drew gasps from the crowd, and his classmates shouted his name in concern. Present Mic exclaimed that Izuku had made it through and was quickly catching up to Todoroki, who was ahead. Dodging smaller robots, Izuku reached the second obstacle, the fall. He glanced at Todoroki, who was using ice to glide forward, and then turned to find a way over the obstacle. Spotting some of his classmates nearby, he hesitated for a moment. Present Mic noted that Izuku was walking away from the next obstacle for some unknown reason. Izuku questioned himself, wondering why he was taking such risks. He turned and sprinted toward the edge of the fall, prompting Present Mic to announce his sudden movement. With determination, Izuku leaped onto a thin wire, his senses sharpening as he prepared to sprint across it. He launched off and ran with remarkable agility, surprising both the audience and his competitors. Reaching the minefield, Izuku noticed Todoroki taking his time to navigate through it carefully. He looked back to see Bakugo charging forward at incredible speed. In a moment of impulsiveness, Izuku decided to improvise and sprinted straight into the minefield, using the explosions to propel himself forward. One by one, he accelerated, closing the gap on Todoroki. A loud blast erupted behind him as Bakugo joined the fray, but Izuku focused on increasing his speed, leaving them behind as they shifted their attention to each other. After successfully crossing the minefield, Izuku pushed himself to his limits, feeling the strain on his legs. He crossed the finish line first, followed closely by Todoroki and an irate Bakugo. As his classmates began to arrive, Izuku spotted Momo, who looked exhausted. He approached her and waved. She asked him to help her, and upon looking behind her, he saw Mineta clinging to her back, which ignited his anger. He swiftly removed Mineta, who let out a yelp of pain, and warned him to never lay a hand on Momo again. After a brief break, the announcement for the cavalry battle was made, but Izuku noticed Midnight's menacing smile, which filled him with apprehension. She declared that first place would earn 1 million points, causing a surge of intense energy from the other competitors. Izuku felt their gazes upon him and resolved to rise to the challenge, urging them to show their strength. As teams were formed, most students avoided him, recognizing him as the top target. Ultimately, his team consisted of Uraraka, Tokoyami, and Mei Hatsumi from the support department. Time passed, and Izuku watched as Ida prepared to use his Recipro Burst. His vision sharpened, allowing him to track Ida's incredible speed. In an instant, he dodged a hand reaching for his headband and noticed Todoroki's team closing in. Ida's exhaust pipes began to overheat, and Izuku complimented him on his impressive move. They prepared to attack again, but time ran out, and Izuku's team scored first. The matches were announced, and Izuku found himself facing Shinso, who had previously declared war on their class. Momo wished him luck, and he complimented her cheerleader costume, causing her to blush. As they entered the arena, Izuku remained cautious, aware that he couldn't underestimate Shinso. Present Mike introduced them, highlighting Izuku's previous victories and Shinso's low profile. Shinso taunted Izuku, questioning if he was quirkless. As the match began, Izuku approached him carefully, on guard. Shinso made a remark about Izuku's injuries from the USJ attack, but Izuku ignored it. However, when Shinso mocked his mother, it ignited a fierce rage within him. Clenching his fists until they bled, he launched himself at Shinso, but suddenly found himself frozen in place, his body no longer responding to his commands. Ojiro, realizing the situation, alerted everyone to Shinso's quirk, which allowed him to control minds. Shinso commanded Izuku to walk out of bounds, but Izuku fought against the control, refusing to give in. He struggled internally, determined not to lose to someone who manipulated his mind. As the crowd watched his battle against Shinso's influence, Izuku felt a sharp pain in his lower back but pushed through it, calling upon his strength to resist. The arena trembled slightly as he fought against the command, determined to prevail. "You might have invaded my mind and body, but there's something I always keep, my word." Izuku screamed, his body engulfed in an intense aura that radiated immense heat, causing Shinso to back away. Shinso stammered in disbelief, asking how this was possible. Izuku replied, reminding him not to underestimate an opponent, whether quirkless or not. With a swift motion, he punched the air, unleashing a gust of wind pressure that sent Shinso flying out of bounds. As Izuku deactivated his power, he collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. He muttered to himself that at least he hadn't passed out this time. Midnight announced his victory, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Later, Izuku approached All Might, who looked hopeful. All Might congratulated him on his win and inquired if he had adjusted to his powers. Izuku admitted he hadn't, explaining that he had only tapped into a fraction of his abilities in a moment of desperation. All Might then expressed his hope that Izuku would reconsider becoming his successor, insisting that Izuku was the best candidate he had ever seen, even better than he had been at a young age. Izuku firmly reiterated that he didn't need a quirk to become a hero or the next symbol of peace. He wanted to prove that quirkless individuals could achieve their dreams and stand alongside those with quirks. He mentioned other students who could be All Might's successor, like Todoroki, who needed to embrace his full potential, and Momo, who was striving to become a hero just like him. Frustrated, Izuku walked away. As he walked, he felt something brushing against his leg, but there was no one beside him. He entered a restroom and pulled down his trousers, shocked to discover a monkey tail reaching down to his knees. He grabbed it, confirming it was real, and wondered if this was the change everyone had mentioned. Concerned about what to do with his new tail, he decided to tear a hole in his trousers to accommodate it. Todoroki approached him in the hallway, wanting to talk. He asked if Izuku was some sort of love child of All Might, which made Izuku burst out laughing. Realizing Todoroki was serious, Izuku questioned why he wanted to know about their relationship. Todoroki explained that it gave him more reason to defeat Izuku, revealing a scar from his mother, who had told him his left side was unbearable to look at because it reminded her of his father. He wanted to prove he didn't need his father's quirk to be a hero. With that, Todoroki left, casting a glance at Izuku's tail before shrugging it off. Later, Izuku comforted Momo after her loss, encouraging her to keep improving. She noticed his tail wiggling and asked him to explain. He shared that it was a change his body had undergone to help control his powers and asked if she thought it looked cool. Momo responded that it looked cute on him, causing his tail to wag like a dog excited for a treat, which made her laugh. After a brief exchange, he wished her luck and prepared for his upcoming fight with Todoroki. As he made his way to the ring, he was stopped by Endeavor, who commanded him to make his son use his left side. Izuku challenged Endeavor, asserting that Todoroki was not a puppet but his own person. He declared that Todoroki needed to use his powers for himself, not for Endeavor. Arriving at the ring, Izuku overheard spectators discussing his tail. Present Mike pointed out the obvious, expressing disbelief at Izuku's transformation. Izuku thought to himself that he felt like he was becoming a Scion, noting that his tail was still short, perhaps not fully developed yet. When midnight announced the start of the match, Izuku saw a wave of ice hurtling toward him. He knew he had to get close and strike fast. Dashing to the side, he sprinted at inhuman speed, closing in on Todoroki. As Todoroki sent out another wave of ice, Izuku leaped over it and delivered a dropkick to Todoroki's chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Izuku taunted him, questioning if he thought he could defeat him with only half his strength, emphasizing that he wasn't even using his full power. As they faced each other, Todoroki shouted, questioning if Izuku had been bribed by his father. In response, Izuku sidestepped Todoroki's attack, grabbing his left arm and bringing him down to the ground. He whispered that the ice was affecting Todoroki, then released him to create some space. Todoroki, furious, insisted he wouldn't use his father's quirk and charged at Izuku, only to be met with a punch to the face that sent him close to the edge of the ring. Izuku shouted that there was no such thing as his or her quirks, only Todoroki's own, prompting Todoroki to reflect on his thoughts and motivations. Izuku shouted, urging Todoroki to embrace his desire to be a hero. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as everyone watched Todoroki engulfed in flames on one side and ice on the other. Izuku felt a surge of excitement, believing he could support Todoroki in this moment. Todoroki challenged him, demanding to see his full power and questioning why he would help his enemy while smiling in the face of adversity. Izuku felt a sharp pain in his head, causing him to stumble to his knees, much to the shock of the audience. He sensed his tail growing longer and thicker, his body radiating heat as adrenaline coursed through his veins. Rising to his feet with a grin, he declared it was time to begin. As he powered up, the entire podium trembled with his energy. He decided that this would be sufficient for the battle ahead. With renewed determination, Izuku asked Todoroki if he was ready, prompting a grin from his opponent. Izuku charged at Todoroki, who retaliated with a wave of ice. Izuku soared over the attack, spotting Todoroki preparing a fire attack with his left hand. He drew back his own hand, forming an energy blast the size of his fist. The tension escalated as spectators expressed their concern about the intensity of the match. As their powers collided, a massive explosion erupted, shaking the entire arena and sending some audience members stumbling. The heat from the blast made everyone sweat. Once the dust settled, Present Mike commented on the chaotic scene, while Erasure Head noted the drastic temperature fluctuations in the arena. When the smoke cleared, Izuku stood in the arena, his sleeve torn away, breathing heavily, while Todoroki was out of bounds. Midnight announced Izuku as the winner, prompting cheers from the crowd. Izuku approached Todoroki, who struggled to rise, and offered his hand. To his surprise, Todoroki accepted it. Izuku expressed his enjoyment of the match and hoped they could face each other again at their full strength, referring to Todoroki as a friend. This brought a small smile to Todoroki's face as he pondered the meaning of friendship while walking out, with Izuku playfully flicking his tail behind him. The audience buzzed with excitement, discussing the impressive display of power and wondering how strong the two could become at their peak. In a different universe, a muscular figure in an orange and blue GI expressed his eagerness to fight someone who had become a Scion. Another tall figure resembling an angel, holding a staff, confirmed the news. A shorter individual with spiky black hair protested, claiming that no one could simply become a Scion. The angel remarked that this Scion might not last long, hinting at upcoming visitors from their universe. Back in Izuku's universe, just before he could enter the waiting room, someone gently grabbed his tail, causing him to react. Momo playfully acknowledged the sensitivity of his tail, which made Izuku pull it away and wrap it around his waist. She complimented him on helping Todoroki and expressed her pride. After a brief kiss, they exchanged glances filled with excitement and anticipation for the upcoming finals against Bakugo. Izuku stood opposite Bakugo, who appeared both furious and satisfied. Bakugo declared his intent to defeat Izuku in front of the audience, demanding that he unleash his full power. Izuku grinned, warning Bakugo to be careful what he wished for. As midnight announced the start of the match, both fighters launched at each other, their fists colliding with tremendous force. Bakugo utilized his explosions to enhance his attacks, while Izuku countered with energy blasts, leading to a fierce exchange of blows. As the battle intensified, Bakugo attempted a punch to Izuku's gut, but Izuku dodged and retaliated with a flying kick. Bakugo ducked under the kick and tried to sweep Izuku's feet, causing him to lose balance. In response, Izuku unleashed a blast from his hand, pushing Bakugo back. Bakugo then created a smoke screen, obscuring Izuku's vision. However, Izuku sensed Bakugo's next move and countered with a side kick, sending Bakugo flying out of the smoke, much to the audience's surprise. With the smoke cleared by a gust of wind, Izuku faced Bakugo, who looked furious. Izuku readied his stance, taunting Bakugo to come at him. Bakugo charged, altering his trajectory to attack from above, but Izuku was prepared. As Bakugo unleashed a barrage of explosions, Izuku braced himself, crossing his arms defensively. Despite the onslaught, Izuku remained determined. He challenged Bakugo to go all out, knowing the stakes were high. Bakugo soared into the sky, spinning and preparing a powerful attack. Izuku felt the ground shake beneath him as he powered up, the heat radiating from his aura. He formed an energy ball at his hip, chanting the name of his technique. As Bakugo spun rapidly, creating a tornado of smoke, Izuku's energy ball began to shine brightly. Both fighters unleashed their powerful attacks simultaneously, filling the arena with an incredible display of light and energy. The impact. Both Izuku and Bakugo unleashed powerful blasts that collided, shaking the entire arena and sending some audience members stumbling back from the sheer force. The beam from Izuku's attack sent Bakugo flying, crashing against the wall and out of bounds. Izuku stood still, breathing heavily, sweat glistening on his muscular frame. He called out to Bakugo, concerned about his well-being. After a moment, Bakugo let out a low growl of pain. Izuku confirmed that Bakugo was okay, but he stumbled and collapsed to his knees. Izuku Midoriya wins the sports festival. Midnight announced, prompting cheers and applause from the crowd. With a chuckle, Izuku celebrated his victory, noticing Momo in the stands, beaming with pride. He raised his fist in triumph, eliciting even more cheers, and shared a grin with All Might, who was watching from his seat. As the ceremony unfolded, Todoroki took third place, Bakugo second, and Izuku stood proudly in first, a bright smile on his face. Midnight announced the medal presentations, and All Might awkwardly entered before his introduction. He awarded medals to Todoroki and Bakugo, the latter surprisingly receiving praise without anger. Finally, he approached Izuku. "Young Midoriya, you did well. Keep working hard, and you'll become a marvelous hero," All Might said. Izuku thanked him, accepting the medal and glancing at the crowd, where Momo and Midnight both smiled back at him. He leaned into All Might, teasingly asking if he liked his victory stance. The next day, Class 1A awaited Aizawa, who entered with his usual bored expression. "Okay class, today you'll be choosing your internships," he announced, displaying a screen filled with offers. Izuku was first, Todoroki second, and Bakugo third. "But before that, you need hero names," he added, igniting excitement in the class before silencing them. He then directed a comment to Izuku, stating he was needed in the principal's office. Izuku left, pondering the reason as he stood before the principal's door. After knocking, he heard a cheerful, "Come in," and stepped inside to find Principal Nizu sipping tea. "Please have a seat. Would you like some tea?" Nizu offered, but Izuku politely declined. "Now, down to business. Midoriya, I have a proposition for you. You're more powerful than most pro-heroes, which makes some of your internships less useful. Therefore, I suggest you obtain a temporary hero license and gain experience in Hosu City," Nizu said, brightening Izuku's spirits. "I would love that. When can I start?" Izuku eagerly asked. Nizu informed him that he would begin at the start of the internships and inquired if he had chosen a hero name. Izuku admitted he had not yet decided, prompting Nizu to smirk. "I thought you might have one in mind, Limitbreaker." This revelation shocked Izuku, leaving him stuttering in disbelief. Nizu explained that it had not been easy to connect the dots, but he was pleased that Izuku had chosen the hero path. Back in class, Izuku sat pondering his hero name. He contemplated the implications of revealing it, knowing that villains would recognize him and potentially target him. Midnight called his name, prompting him to approach the podium with a blank slate and a marker. After a moment of thought, he began writing but hesitated, frustrated. He rubbed off the name and wrote one he would be proud to wear, shocking his classmates. "My hero name will be Limitbreaker," he declared, causing Jaws to drop and Aizawa to emerge from his sleeping bag in disbelief. Kirishima began to speak, but was cut off. "Yep. I am the infamous Vigilante, Limitbreaker," Izuku confirmed before Aizawa captured him. Aizawa expressed his frustration, noting that Izuku had always eluded him. Izuku explained that Principal Nizu had discovered his identity and allowed him to reveal it if he wished. After fielding questions from his classmates, Izuku felt drained as he sat down for dinner in the common area, reflecting on his upcoming temporary hero role in Hosu City. As the time for internships arrived, Izuku noticed changes in his appearance. His hair stood up and thickened, and his face appeared more mature and masculine. His increased metabolism caused him to eat significantly more, surprising his classmates, though they eventually adjusted. Bakugo's anger toward Izuku had lessened, though their rivalry remained. "Good luck with your internship, Momo," Izuku said, wishing her well before they shared a brief kiss. She urged him to be careful and return safely as she boarded the train. When Izuku's train arrived, he took a seat with his costume packed in his suitcase. He noticed Ida sitting nearby, his fists clenched in anger. Sensing Ida's desire for revenge due to his brother's encounter with the hero killer Stain, Izuku approached him. "Hey Ida, going to Hosu City too?" Izuku asked, trying to lighten the mood. Ida responded with a curt, "Yeah," and Izuku sat next to him, understanding his pain. "Hey Ida, no need to pry, but are you heading to Hosu City for Stain?" Izuku inquired, causing Ida to flinch and erupt with anger. "Yeah, so what?" "You wouldn't understand," he snapped, pain evident in his voice. Izuku calmly replied, explaining that he understood all too well and warned him that nothing good would come from seeking revenge. "Oh, so tell me, what should I do?" Ida retorted sarcastically. Izuku paused, then looked directly at him. "You are the one who needs to decide which path you're walking. Whatever choice you make, I'll support you, but think it through." With that, Izuku returned to his seat. When they reached their stop, they stepped outside, greeted by the sunlight. Izuku thought about reaching his rented apartment and made his way there. He entered a simple, small apartment that featured a kitchen with a table, a sofa, and a separate room with a single bed. Izuku decided to explore the city, tossing his suit onto the sofa before grabbing his wallet and phone. Dressed casually in a gray t-shirt, blue jeans, and gray sneakers, he wrapped his tail around his waist like a belt. As he walked along the sidewalk, he memorized the roads, pathways, and alleyways, gathering information about villain attacks and various gangs from local shop owners. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed through the streets, followed by gunfire. Adjusting his hearing, he realized that police were surrounding a group of robbers. He rushed out of the shop, attempting to fly but quickly found himself falling. He landed on the ground, rolling to absorb the impact, then sprinted toward the chaos. He arrived just in time to see several officers injured and the robbers mounting black motorbikes. 3 bikes sped away, but Izuku managed to knock one robber off his bike, rendering him unconscious. He shouted for the officers to restrain the robber while he pursued the others. With determination, he jumped onto the remaining motorbike, eager to test his skills. As he sped through the streets, weaving between cars, he overheard the news reporters announcing the robbers' escape toward the bridge. Izuku pushed himself to catch up, but the robbers noticed him and began firing their weapons. He skillfully dodged their shots while gaining ground, but the robbers shot out the tires of passing cars, creating a massive blockage. Forced to take a detour, he raced toward the bridge, spotting the robbers preparing to escape in a truck. Feeling a surge of adrenaline, Izuku revved his bike and prepared for a daring move. He launched himself off the edge of the bridge, flying through the air in slow motion. He spotted a news helicopter filming his every move before landing on the truck's trailer, abandoning his bike. With a powerful punch, he created a hole in the trailer and jumped inside, catching the robbers off guard. The robbers stared at him in disbelief as he confidently declared, "Magic?" before swiftly taking them down one by one. He approached the driver and warned him to pull over, holding an energy blast in front of his face, causing him to sweat nervously. When the police arrived, they quickly restrained the robbers. Izuku stood nearby, holding a helmet under his arm and waving. However, the officers drew their weapons, ordering him to drop the helmet and put his hands up, accusing him of illegal quirk use. Izuku calmly explained that he was a hero in training with a temporary license and that he was quirkless. He showed them his license, and the officers lowered their weapons, surprised by his identity as Limitbreaker. After a lengthy explanation, Izuku returned to the store to buy groceries before heading to his apartment. He prepared a meal for 6, changed into his hero costume, and admired his reflection in the mirror. His outfit consisted of a black armored suit that was flexible and bulletproof, tactical gloves with reinforced knuckles, reinforced black pants, tactical boots, and a mask that covered his face from the nose down, allowing his hair to flow freely. As night fell, he set out on patrol, moving silently across the rooftops while listening for any signs of trouble. He gazed up at the starry sky, wishing Momo could see the beauty of the night. Suddenly, he heard screams coming from an alleyway. He powered up and leaped from rooftop to rooftop, quickly making his way to the source of the commotion. Landing in the alley, he saw a gang surrounding a group of frightened girls. One of the gang members shouted at him, while others brandished weapons and prepared their quirks. Izuku remained silent, observing them carefully from his crouched position. The same gang member demanded to know who he was, his unease growing as he met Izuku's cold gaze. With a menacing tone, Izuku began to recite, "Roses are red." He straightened up, taking slow steps toward them, causing the gang members to back away, intimidated by his presence. "Violets are blue," he continued, his voice low and threatening. "You'll be begging when I'm done with you." His aura of intimidation filled the alley, leaving the gang members in shock and fear. One by one, they began to disappear, overwhelmed by his presence, while some attempted to flee but were swiftly taken down. Izuku approached the gang leader, who cowered against the wall in terror. "Please, don't hurt me," he pleaded, trembling. Izuku crouched down, locking eyes with him, and playfully said, "Boo," causing the leader to faint from fear. After ensuring the girls were safe, he smiled and removed his mask, reassuring them that help was on the way. The next day, Izuku walked through the city in his hero costume, his mask down and goggles in place, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. A new hero had emerged in Hosu City, capturing 5 criminals after a bank robbery and dismantling a gang at night, saving dozens of captives. His name was Limitbreaker. Izuku felt a rush of fame as he watched the news report, but his moment of pride was interrupted when a little boy approached him. Crouching down to the child's eye level, Izuku greeted him with a smile. The boy nervously asked for an autograph, recognizing him from the sports festival. Izuku happily obliged, writing down the boy's name, Jack Wesley, before ruffling his hair and saying goodbye. After a long day of signing autographs, Izuku took a break, feeling a bit bored without any real action. Suddenly his apartment shook, prompting him to jump up and look out the window. He realized that Numu were attacking the city, and he cursed himself for tempting fate. Without hesitation, he leaped out of the window, hovering slightly to soften his landing before racing toward the chaos. Upon arriving at the scene, Izuku saw pro-heroes struggling against the Numus, one muscular, one skinny, and another with wings. A hero called out for assistance, and Izuku donned his mask and goggles, feeling a surge of excitement. He knew he couldn't use his full power yet, but he was ready to fight. The city was in turmoil, with buildings crumbling under the Numus assault. Izuku shouted for everyone to stay clear before darting toward the muscular Numu. He dodged a punch and retaliated with a powerful strike to its stomach, sending it crashing into a building, which then collapsed on top of it. He quickly turned his attention to the winged Numu, delivering a fierce axe kick that created a crater upon impact, followed by a barrage of energy blasts. However, the muscular Numu retaliated, landing a heavy punch that sent Izuku crashing into the ground. The shockwaves from the blow knocked nearby heroes off their feet. Just as the Numu prepared to strike again, Izuku caught its fists, rising to his feet despite his battered appearance. His costume was torn, blood trickled down his head, and bruises marred his body. With a fierce determination, he crushed the Numu's hands, sending it crashing down into the ground. Izuku unleashed a flurry of punches, channeling more power until the Numu finally fell. Breathing heavily, he declared that things were taken care of. But then he heard a clanging sound, like metal striking metal. Scanning the area, he spotted a hero he recognized but noticed that Ito was missing. Concerned, Izuku powered up and vanished from sight, sprinting through the streets toward the source of the noise. As he turned a corner, he heard a groan of pain that spurred him on. He found Ida on the ground, blood pouring from his shoulder, with the hero killer stain looming over him, ready to strike. Time seemed to slow as Izuku charged at Stain, sparks flickering around him. His hair glowed with energy as he closed the distance, landing a powerful punch that sent Stain crashing into a wall. Stain, shaken but not defeated, climbed out of the rubble, his jaw dislocated. Izuku stood firm, locking eyes with Stain, who was filled with bloodlust. He glanced back at Ida to ensure he was safe before pulling out his phone to send a distress signal for nearby heroes. Ida, struggling to speak, asked why Izuku was there. Izuku replied that heroes must risk everything to save lives and that meddling in others' affairs was part of being a hero. Stain grinned at this declaration, and Izuku acknowledged Stain's motives but stated that killing was not something he admired. With determination, Izuku charged at Stain, dodging a blade aimed at his chest. He countered with an energy blast that shattered the blade before sending another blast into Stain's stomach, forcing him back. In a swift motion, Izuku appeared behind Stain, delivering a powerful blow that sent him crashing to the ground. Stain retaliated by throwing a dagger, which Izuku narrowly avoided. However, Stain then lunged at Ida, blade drawn, and the sound of flesh being cut filled the air. Izuku stood in shock as he saw Ida with a blade through his stomach. Stain, surprised, acknowledged Izuku's heroism but expressed regret for the injury. Just as Stain attempted to pull his blade free, Izuku gripped it tightly, refusing to let go. He shouted defiantly, channeling his power as he yanked Stain closer, landing a solid punch to his face. Ida urged Izuku to leave, feeling responsible for the situation. Izuku countered that fighting for others made one strong, while fighting for oneself was a weakness. Stain, impressed, smiled widely before drawing his second blade, but when he turned, Izuku had vanished once more. Izuku felt a sudden rush of pain in his back, causing him to be propelled forward and struck in the gut, which made him collapse to his knees. Gathering his strength, he charged a powerful blast and directed it at Stain, sending him crashing into the ground, leaving a trail behind. Before Stain could recover, he received a kick to the face, slamming him against the wall, followed by an uppercut that lifted him off the ground before he was forcefully brought back down. Todoroki rushed in, but his words were cut short by the sight before him. Izuku, struggling to stay upright, pulled out a blade and clutched his wound as blood flowed from it. Todoroki shouted in concern and hurried to help, but Izuku urged him to restrain Stain first and then assist the heroes. After Stain was restrained, Ida and the pro-hero were able to move again. They emerged onto the streets, where a group of pro-heroes approached them. One of the heroes, noticing Izuku's battered state, called for an ambulance and police. Just then, a screech from above drew everyone's attention. A winged Numu swooped down and seized Izuku, lifting him into the sky. Despite his efforts to fight back, he was too weak. Suddenly, the Numu screeched and began to descend. In a surprising turn, Stain broke free and charged at the Numu, delivering a fatal blow that caused Izuku to plummet to the ground. Endeavor arrived just in time to witness Stain standing, radiating a menacing aura that made everyone falter. Stain's mask fell away, revealing a disfigured face. Despite his injuries, Izuku summoned every ounce of strength he had left to strike Stain in the stomach, knocking him out. As Izuku glanced at the pro-heroes and noticed a reporter's helicopter, he succumbed to unconsciousness. Shocked, everyone rushed to his side as ambulances and police arrived to take him to the hospital, while Stain was escorted to jail. At a nearby bar, Tamura expressed his frustration, scratching his neck in anger. He vented to Hisashi about Izuku's relentless strength and questioned their decision to try to turn him into a Numu instead of eliminating him when they had the chance. Hisashi, smoking a cigar, acknowledged the mistake but insisted that they needed a new plan before Izuku found them. Their conversation was interrupted by a voice on the television. All for One announced that they had a new recruit to handle Izuku, and a figure stepped into view. Tamura, furious, demanded to know who the newcomer was. The figure, with a menacing smile, introduced himself as Frieza, the Emperor of Universe 7 and Destroyer of Planets. He hinted at his willingness to assist them, making it clear that he was not to be underestimated. At the hospital, Izuku jolted awake in the hospital bed, wincing from the pain of his wound. He focused his energy to heal it and glanced around the dimly lit room. It was still nighttime, and he could see firefighters working to extinguish the flames outside. Turning his head, he noticed Momo sleeping peacefully, though her cheeks were puffy from crying. He felt a pang of guilt as he whispered to her, expressing his sorrow for her distress. As he gently brushed some strands of hair from her face, Momo stirred and woke up. Her eyes widened in relief and sadness as she pulled him into a tight embrace, tears soaking into his shoulder. He reassured her that everything was fine now, that he was okay, which only made her hold him tighter. She expressed her fear of losing him, recalling how serious his injuries had been. Izuku promised her that he would never leave, envisioning a future where they would build a happy family together and watch their children grow. After a week of internships and hero work, Izuku returned to class, where he had to submit a report and surrender his hero license. His classmates were animatedly discussing their experiences, with Kirishima and Siro teasing Bakugo about his new hairstyle, which quickly reverted to its usual state in response to Bakugo's anger. They debated who had changed the most during their internships, and just as Izuku entered, he felt a wave of sorrow wash over him, his gaze fixed on his hands. Kaminari excitedly announced Izuku's achievements in Hosu, where he had captured the hero killer and defeated the Numus, prompting cheers from his classmates. However, Momo noticed Izuku's flinch at the attention. Concerned, she asked if he was okay, but he forced a smile that she saw through. He hesitated, trying to find the right words, before downplaying the experience. In a flashback, Izuku found himself in a villain's hideout, surrounded by the aftermath of a brutal attack. The sight of families he couldn't save filled him with guilt and anger, and he quietly apologized to himself, tears streaming down his face. Back in reality, Momo called out to him again, breaking through his thoughts. He quickly reassured her that it had been an educational experience, though the guilt lingered. During their hero training with All Might, the class participated in a rescue operation race. Izuku, determined to improve rather than win, closed his eyes and concentrated. To everyone's surprise, he began to levitate, his classmates watching in awe as he powered up, causing the ground to tremble. In an instant he shot off toward All Might, leaving everyone stunned by his incredible speed. Kaminari exclaimed his disbelief, while others expressed their shock at Izuku's newfound ability to fly. Bakugo seethed with frustration, feeling overshadowed by Izuku's progress. Momo, clutching her chest, felt a mix of pride and concern for him. After the training, Aizawa announced a summer training camp, which excited the class until he added that only those who passed the final exam would be allowed to attend. Momo eagerly offered to tutor her classmates, while Izuku sat deep in thought, reflecting on his conversation with All Might. In a flashback, All Might expressed his sympathy for Izuku's recent mission and listened as Izuku voiced his fears about facing an overwhelming villain. He shared his concerns about the League of Villains targeting him and his classmates. All Might reassured him that they would fight together, no matter the odds, and Izuku nodded, though a heavy weight remained in his heart. Back in the present, Momo asked if Izuku would join them for the training camp, but he declined, stating he needed to focus on his training. As everyone gathered in the cafeteria, discussing the upcoming exams, Izuku found himself lost in thought, reminiscing about his past life as a Scion in another reality. Suddenly, Monoma from Class 1B bumped into him, making a sarcastic remark about Izuku's encounter with the hero killer. Izuku felt a surge of anger as Monoma continued to taunt him, reminding him of the families he couldn't save. In a moment of frustration, Izuku's emotions erupted, causing a nearby table to break. As the cafeteria shook with the intensity of his aura, Izuku confronted Monoma, lifting him off the ground and glaring at him with a fierce determination. Tears streamed down his face as he expressed the pain he had endured, emphasizing that it was far worse than any physical injury. It was something that couldn't be healed, and Izuku felt the anger boiling inside him as he dropped his opponent to the floor, causing him to gasp for air. Teachers rushed in, looking at Izuku with concern. Midnight asked what was happening, but upon seeing Izuku in tears, she walked away, releasing her power. She pressed for answers, and Uraraka began to explain, but was interrupted when Midnight gasped at the mention of countless families suffering. Midnight's outburst shocked everyone as she defended Izuku, emphasizing the struggles he had faced, before leaving to find him. After school, as everyone prepared for the written exams, Izuku was nowhere to be found. He returned later that night, dirty and sweaty. A week later, the students took their written exams, some nervous while others complimented Momo for her tutoring. Now, everyone stood in the central plaza, teachers in front of them, waiting for the physical exams to begin. The teachers announced that the students would be fighting in pairs against them, leaving everyone in shock, except for Izuku, who looked forward to the challenge. Aizawa called out the second pair, Midoriya and Bakugo. As they exchanged glances, Aizawa revealed their opponent All Might, who landed in front of them with a confident declaration. Bakugo was shocked, but Izuku grinned, stating that he had been preparing for this moment. His newfound attitude surprised everyone, prompting laughter from All Might. As Izuku and Bakugo stood at the entrance, waiting for the signal to start, Izuku reminded Bakugo that they needed to work together. But Bakugo shot him a fierce glare, insisting he didn't need help. Just then, the bell rang, and Bakugo charged ahead. They barely made it halfway before All Might unleashed a powerful gust of wind, sending Bakugo flying while Izuku stood firm. All Might's intimidating presence filled the air as he challenged the heroes to come at him with their full power. Izuku felt his blood boil, his fists clenching as he responded, questioning why All Might wouldn't use his full strength. All Might, taken aback by Izuku's boldness, tried to maintain his composure while chuckling. In the monitor room, Kirishima exclaimed in excitement, marveling at Izuku's challenge to All Might. Back in the fight, Bakugo called out that All Might was his target and launched himself with explosions, using a stun grenade. He aimed for All Might's face, but All Might caught him effortlessly. Undeterred, Bakugo unleashed a barrage of explosions, only to be met with laughter from All Might. In a swift motion, All Might brought Bakugo down, leaving him gasping for air. Just as he prepared to finish Bakugo, the ground shook violently, and sparks flew as Izuku powered up, enveloped in a gray aura. He shouted his readiness and, with a flash, disappeared, reappearing behind All Might and striking him in the back, sending him crashing into a building. Izuku urged Bakugo to get up, insisting they finish the fight together. Bakugo growled in response, readying himself for All Might's counterattack. All Might complimented Izuku's hit but warned it wasn't powerful enough. He reappeared in front of them, swinging at Izuku, who surprisingly caught his punch. Izuku encouraged Bakugo to unleash his power, and before All Might could react, Bakugo blasted him into a nearby house. Izuku called for Bakugo to follow him as they took to the air, Bakugo using his explosions to propel himself. However, before they could reach the finish line, All Might appeared, shattering Bakugo's gauntlets and delivering a powerful punch to Izuku, sending him crashing into a house. All Might thought he could finish Bakugo while Izuku was down, but Bakugo, fueled by determination, unleashed his maximum explosion, straining his hands. He resolved to keep fighting, declaring he wouldn't accept defeat, but ultimately succumbed to exhaustion. Izuku emerged from the rubble, charging at All Might. Just as All Might prepared to strike, Izuku used instant transmission to appear behind him, delivering a hammering blow followed by a side kick. All Might caught the kick and slammed Izuku into the ground, creating a crater. He declared that there was no way they could win, but Izuku vanished again, stating he had to use his ultimate technique. With a fierce shout, Izuku activated Kaioken, engulfed in a crimson-red aura, screaming in pain as he powered up to his maximum, shaking the entire arena. The ground trembled, and buildings began to collapse as he focused on All Might. With a battle cry, he dashed forward at blinding speed, landing a punch that made All Might spit out saliva, followed by a side kick that sent him crashing to the ground. Izuku unleashed a flurry of energy blasts, and All Might struggled to regain his footing as his weights fell away from the damage. Impressed, All Might acknowledged Izuku's strength but prepared to get serious. The two clashed, creating shockwaves that shook the surroundings. Izuku felt the strain of his transformation, knowing he couldn't hold it for long. He jumped away, gathering energy for his finishing move. Izuku unleashed a powerful beam of light, straining against the force of All Might's counterattack. As the two energies clashed, Izuku pushed himself further, calling upon the Kaioken technique to double the size of his attack and enhance his strength. All Might, feeling the pressure, responded with his full power, resulting in a massive explosion that sent both combatants flying, leaving them unconscious. In another universe, an angel observed the battle, intrigued by the Scion's potential. The angel contemplated training him, sensing that he and the other two would form a strong bond. Izuku found himself floating in an endless abyss, surrounded by nothingness and a chilling cold. A voice echoed through the void, sending shivers down his spine and causing his heart to race with fear. Suddenly, he jolted awake in a hospital bed, groaning as he fell to the floor. He clutched his chest, feeling his heart pounding fiercely, his breath uneven from the shock. Fear gripped him like never before. He wondered about the voice and who it belonged to as he took in his surroundings, realizing he was still in the recovery room at UA. Approaching the window, Izuku's thoughts turned dark. He feared that an unbeatable villain was on the horizon. Determined, he resolved to push himself to the limit during the upcoming summer camp before heading to class. Mina excitedly suggested a class trip to the mall for summer camp, capturing everyone's attention. Most of the class agreed, except for Bakugo and Todoroki, who was visiting his mother. Just then, the door slid open, and Izuku entered in his school uniform. Before he could greet his classmates, Momo jumped on him, wrapping him in a hug. He asked about the mall trip and learned that the entire class would be going. Momo, initially frustrated, calmed down and informed him that he had passed both his practical and written exams. After school, as everyone returned to their dorms, Izuku received praise from his classmates for his performance against All Might. All Might expressed his pride in Izuku's growth, admitting that the fight had pushed him. Izuku laughed, playfully insisting that he had nearly knocked All Might out before waving goodbye. All Might, deep in thought, wished that Izuku could HRS his quirk for even greater strength. As Izuku walked toward the dorms, he felt an unsettling chill, as if someone were watching him. He turned to see a shadowy figure against the wall, its form dark and formless, with lifeless white eyes and floating hair that hinted at small horns. The figure exuded an uncomfortable aura, filling Izuku with the same fear he had felt in his dream, causing his heart to race. He wondered if this was the same entity from his nightmare. The figure formed a menacing smile that revealed emptiness, and in a chilling, demonic voice, it proclaimed its intent to come for him, promising death like that of others before him. As the figure vanished, Izuku fell to his knees, clutching his chest and struggling to steady his heartbeat. Confusion and fear washed over him as he contemplated the meaning behind the figure's words. The next day, Izuku walked with his classmates, holding hands with Momo as they made their way to the shopping mall. As they approached the entrance, they began to separate, with Momo heading off with the girls and Izuku with the boys. However, a dark presence made him hesitate, prompting him to venture off on his own. He tracked the familiar dark energy until he caught sight of a hooded figure. It was Shigaraki. Izuku recognized him and felt compelled to follow. They sat opposite each other at a cafe. Shigaraki glared at Izuku, but Izuku remained unfazed. He calmly asked Shigaraki for a good reason not to arrest him right then and there. Shigaraki, with a cocky smile, replied that Izuku wouldn't want the Nomus swarming the mall and hinted at new recruits ready for action. Izuku, crossing his arms and narrowing his eyes, pressed for Shigaraki's true intentions. Shigaraki questioned the difference between himself and Stain, wondering why the focus was on Stain rather than him. Izuku pondered the question, suggesting that it might be due to Stain's motives and beliefs. Stain aimed to expose the truth about heroes, claiming they acted out of selfish desires. While Stain's stance made him appear admirable to some, Izuku did not condone his violent methods. In contrast, Shigaraki lurked in the shadows, making him more dangerous yet less recognized. Standing up to leave, Izuku warned Shigaraki that if he made any moves, he wouldn't hesitate to take action. He added that if their paths crossed again, Shigaraki would regret it. As Izuku departed, Shigaraki seethed with determination, vowing to eliminate all true heroes, including Izuku. After shopping for essentials, Izuku was on his way back to the meeting point when he noticed a flash of yellow in a window's reflection. He saw a version of himself with spiky yellow hair and bright green eyes, staring back at him with a challenging gaze. The image vanished when he blinked, returning to his normal appearance. When he met up with his friends, they were laden with shopping bags before heading back to the dorms. During the weekend, Izuku met with Mei Hatsum, asking for her help in creating adjustable weights similar to All Might's. Her excitement was infectious, and she bombarded him with questions and ideas. As the semester progressed, Izuku spent much of his time in his mind space, searching for anything useful related to the mysterious figure with yellow hair. A knock on his door pulled him back to reality, and he opened it to find an excited Momo. She beamed at him, asking if he wanted to join everyone at the school pool. Izuku considered it, but Momo's pleading eyes and puffed cheeks made it hard to resist. He relented, and she hugged him tightly before noticing something. Momo pointed out that he had grown taller. Confused, Izuku checked a mirror and realized he was now about 185 centimeters, taller than Ida and almost as tall as Shoji. He joked about being on some sort of drag, which made Momo giggle. She urged him to get ready, and Izuku, still pondering his scars, grabbed his swimming shorts and towel before leaving. Upon entering the boys' changing room, Izuku greeted everyone. As he scanned the room, Kirishima exclaimed in surprise at his sudden growth. Izuku joked about it again, but Bakugo interrupted, declaring that his height wouldn't change the fact that he was still the best. Izuku rolled his eyes and changed quickly. Once outside, the boys noticed the girls hadn't arrived yet. Izuku approached the pool's edge and dove in, gliding effortlessly through the water. He surfaced, taking in the bright light above, and noticed his friends staring at him. He playfully asked if they hadn't come to swim, snapping them out of their daze. When the girls arrived, they saw the boys training, except for Izuku, who floated peacefully on the water, gazing at the sky. Momo called out to him and he swam over, climbing out of the water and revealing his toned physique. The girls couldn't help but blush at the sight, admiring his muscles and height, while some felt a twinge of jealousy toward Momo. They noticed the scars on his body, a reminder of his struggles. Momo invited him to join their game, and he agreed. They played volleyball in the water, enjoying the moment. However, the fun was interrupted when Bakugo, furious, challenged Izuku to a fight, insisting he would prove he was better. Izuku sighed, suggesting Bakugo take a break and enjoy the day. Just then, Ida proposed a race to see who could swim the fastest, shifting the focus back to friendly competition. Like a competition, Ida noted, prompting a smirk from Bakugo and a heavy sigh from Izuku. Bakugo had won the first race, followed by Todoroki, and now Izuku was set to compete against Ida, Ojiro, and Shoji. Kaminari pointed out the amusing comparison between Midoriya and Shoji, commenting on how Izuku was catching up in height. They all took their positions before the whistle blew, signaling the start. Ida glided on the wire while Ojiro and Shoji dove in. Izuku followed suit, using his strength to propel himself through the water, swiftly reaching the finish line and glancing back to see Ojiro and Shoji struggling behind him, with Ida still halfway there. Momo cheered for Izuku, and the other girls joined in, while the boys looked on in disbelief. Ida announced the final competitors Bakugo, Todoroki, and Izuku, who prepared for the last race. With a shout of, "Go!" they launched into the water. Bakugo and Todoroki dove in without using their quirks, while Izuku powered through, quickly leaving them behind. Aizawa, with his hair floating and eyes glowing, declared that it was 5 p.m. and time for everyone to head home. Protests arose, but Aizawa silenced them. Izuku exited, feeling relieved, and remarked to Todoroki and Bakugo about winning without using quirks, chuckling to himself. Later, everyone gathered in front of the buses for the training camp. Izuku and Momo chatted, but Izuku's attention was drawn to a familiar shadow that filled him with fear. Momo noticed his expression and asked if he was alright, to which he responded with a forced smile, trying to shake off the unease. The bus came to a stop, allowing everyone to stretch before two women emerged from a car, dressed in cat-like outfits. They introduced themselves as the Wild Wild Pussycats, and a child with a horned hat stood beside them, looking displeased. Mandalay introduced herself and her teammate, Pixie Bob, who excitedly eyed the boys before Momo stepped protectively in front of Izuku. Mandalay explained that they owned the land and had a campsite at the base of the mountain. Uraraka hesitantly asked why they had stopped, and Azui ominously hinted that they all knew the answer. Mandalay informed them that it was 9:30 a.m. and that if they were quick, they could reach the campsite by noon. Her tone was unsettling, prompting everyone to sprint for their lives. Before they could board the bus, Pixie Bob used her quirk to manipulate the earth, sending everyone tumbling down the hill. When the dust settled, Izuku stood with Momo in his arms, surprising the two heroes. Aizawa presented Izuku with weighted wrist and ankle bands, assigning him the task of wearing them and reaching the camp before noon, forbidding him from flying or powering up. Izuku struggled to stand as he put on the weights, which felt incredibly heavy. Just then he and Momo were blown off the mountain toward their classmates. Everyone stared at Momo and the exhausted Izuku. Ida inquired about Izuku's condition, noticing the weights. Izuku explained that he was wearing them, and Aizawa announced that whoever reached him first would get to boss him around for a day. Izuku gulped as the competitive spirit ignited among his classmates, some boys wearing mischievous grins while the girls looked on with interest. They all raced through the forest, battling mud beasts while Izuku struggled to keep up. Hours later, Class 1A arrived at the camp, utterly exhausted. Momo crossed the finish line first, just ahead of Bakugo, Todoroki, and Ida. Everyone collapsed, breathing heavily, and Momo searched for Izuku but couldn't find him. She thought about how the weights must be holding him back. Aizawa, along with Mandalay, Pixie Bob, and the child, emerged from the building, commenting on their delayed arrival. Mandalay reassured them that they had done well for their first attempt, while Aizawa noted that he expected more from them. Suddenly, loud footsteps echoed, and Izuku emerged from the forest, looking worn and with parts of his clothes torn. He struggled to catch his breath, expressing the difficulty of moving with the weights. Momo rushed to him, removing the weights, and called for help as Izuku was too heavy for her to carry alone. Shoji and Kirishima quickly assisted, lifting Izuku's arms over their shoulders. They were astonished by how heavy he was as they carried him inside to their rooms before heading to lunch. As everyone devoured their meals, Izuku appeared from a corner, his face smudged and stretching his limbs. His eyes widened at the sight of the food, and without hesitation, he rushed in at blinding speed, consuming plate after plate. Mandalay remarked on how it looked like he hadn't eaten in weeks, observing the way everyone, especially Izuku, was enjoying their meals. After an hour, they finished eating, and Izuku felt completely stuffed before they all headed to the hot springs. Mina, feeling a bit shy, asked Momo if she could command Midoriya for them, acknowledging that Momo had come first in their group. Momo firmly stated that Midoriya was hers and hers alone, causing a few scowls among the others. On the other side of the wall, the boys were relaxing in the hot springs. Mineta, with a mischievous glint in his eye, was staring at the wall, lost in his thoughts. He confidently declared that he understood the reason for his quirk. Ida, noticing Mineta's antics, questioned what he was up to. Mineta, in an excited frenzy, proclaimed that walls were meant to be climbed and used his quirk to scale the wall, despite Ida's protests. When Mineta reached the top, he encountered Kota, who harshly told him to try being a human before aspiring to be a hero. Kota then pushed Mineta away, causing him to fall and scream in surprise. Mina cheered for Kota, who, unaware of the praise, turned to look in their direction. In a twist of fate, Izuku caught Mineta mid-fall, using his powers to levitate him before gently landing and heading to Mandalay's office. Once there, Izuku explained the situation and laid Kota down on the sofa. Mandalay informed him that they had asked Kota to keep an eye on Mineta due to his troublesome behavior. As she glanced at Izuku, she noticed the scars on his body and asked about them. Izuku shared that he had always wanted to be a hero, but being quirkless had posed challenges. He revealed that he had unlocked a power within himself, transforming his appearance and allowing him to become a quirked vigilante. Izuku recounted how, at the age of 12, he had saved lives from a burning building, earning his first scars in the process. Mandalay was shocked to learn that he had faced villains at such a young age. Izuku explained that circumstances had forced him to fight back, leading him to adopt the hero name Limitbreaker. He then inquired about Kota's hatred for heroes, prompting Pixie Bob to enter the office with a somber expression. Pixie Bob revealed that Kota's parents had been killed by a villain, sharing her own painful history of being raised by a villainous father who had brainwashed her mother. Izuku empathized with her struggles, noting how he had been broken by his experiences but found strength in his classmates, particularly Momo, who had helped him regain his footing. As Izuku prepared to leave for the hot springs, he noticed the shock on Mandalay and Pixie Bob's faces, leaving them to ponder the weight of his story. The following day, everyone was awakened early for training. They gathered in the fields, visibly tired. Aizawa tossed a ball to Izuku, instructing him to demonstrate his improvement without relying on his special abilities. As Izuku prepared, the ground trembled, and he began to glow with a gray aura. Rocks levitated around him as he unleashed a powerful throw, creating a sonic boom that knocked everyone off their feet. Aizawa, observing the results, sighed and declared Bakugo's turn next, noting that it had been pointless to choose Izuku. Bakugo hurled the ball with a fierce shout, and Aizawa recorded the distance, revealing that they would focus on improving their quirks during the training camp, which he ominously described as a living hell. Class 1B arrived, astonished to find Class 1A already engaged in intense training. Vlad King explained that they were there to push everyone to their limits. Suddenly, screams echoed from the woods, and the ground shook as Izuku began to levitate, his hair and aura flashing gold. After a moment of intensity, he returned to his normal appearance, frustrated at not achieving his goal. Later, everyone returned to the cabin only to find it empty of food, with only ingredients left behind. Pixie Bob reminded them that they had cooked for them the previous day, handing out instructions for making curry. Izuku, having just finished his training, arrived and assessed the situation, realizing they would have to cook for themselves. Izuku eagerly claimed a pile of ingredients, prompting Momo to chuckle as she joined him. Using his powers, Izuku cooked curry with impressive skill, and before long he and Momo had prepared a giant pot of it. Everyone watched in amazement as Izuku devoured bowl after bowl, while Momo smiled at his enthusiasm. He playfully defended his appetite, saying he needed to stay in shape. As darkness fell and the others finished their meals, Izuku noticed Kota walking away with an angry expression, heading toward a hill near a cave that overlooked the camp. Stepping out from the shadows, Izuku approached him with his bowl of curry. Kota's angry shout echoed through the woods, demanding to know how Izuku had found him. Izuku casually mentioned sensing his energy before stopping beside Kota to admire the view. When he remarked on its beauty, Kota remained silent, only growling in response. Kota expressed his frustration, claiming that heroes and villains were merely show-offs who sought to harm each other. Izuku countered that not everyone was like that, suggesting that Kota's parents had not been either. This provoked an intense reaction from Kota, who shouted that Izuku knew nothing about his past and accused him of being just another pathetic hero. Izuku, however, saw the sadness and pain in Kota's eyes and shared his own story of being deemed quirkless at a young age, enduring bullying but never giving up on his dream of becoming a hero. He expressed his desire to save people, regardless of the risks, hoping that one day Kota would understand his parents' choices. After placing the bowl of curry on the ground for Kota, Izuku walked away, leaving Kota to reflect on their conversation. As night fell, everyone settled in for bed, while shadows lurked in the forest. A conversation among the figures hinted at a plan, with one eager for a confrontation with Izuku. The next day, Class 1A and Class 1B pushed themselves to their limits during training. In the middle of the field, Izuku meditated, seeking a way to reach the next level. Suddenly, his eyes opened, filled with determination. He stood up, stretched, and positioned himself with his feet shoulder-width apart, closing his eyes to breathe deeply and relax. A soft glow emanated from him as small rocks began to levitate. It was time for action. As Aizawa monitored the students, he felt the ground tremble beneath him. Turning his attention to Izuku, he witnessed the earth shaking as Izuku powered up. Izuku let out a primal scream, tightening his fists and feeling his body tense. He called out for more power, creating a powerful wind that pushed nearby boulders away. Electricity crackled around him, drawing the attention of his classmates, who were astonished by the spectacle. Izuku faced the sky and unleashed a roar that resonated across the field, his hair and aura shimmering with golden energy. A voice echoed in his mind, reminding him that true power comes from necessity, not desire. He focused on his need to protect everyone, causing his energy to surge and sending shockwaves through the area. A final bolt of lightning struck him, enveloping him in a blinding glow that left everyone shielding their eyes. When the light faded, they were left in awe. Izuku stood before them, surrounded by a golden aura and with hair that seemed to defy gravity. Breathing heavily, he noticed the astonished expressions on his classmates' faces. He looked at his hand, feeling the power coursing through him, and quietly acknowledged his achievement before collapsing to the ground, returning to his normal state. Rushed to his side, placing her ear on his back to listen to his steady heartbeat, affectionately calling him a big dummy. When Izuku awoke in the infirmary, he felt a comforting weight on his chest. Looking down, he smiled at the sight of Momo sleeping peacefully. He gently brushed a strand of hair from her face and spoke softly, waking her. Momo rubbed her eyes and asked how he was feeling, to which Izuku replied that he was fine but confused about what had happened. Momo playfully scolded him for pushing himself too hard during training, making him feel small under her intense gaze. As Momo got up from the bed, she informed Izuku that he had transformed, his hair and aura turning golden. Together, they made their way to the meeting spot in the forest, where Momo explained that they would be participating in a test of courage. The students gathered around as Pixie Bob outlined the details, and Izuku assessed his group, contemplating their upcoming challenge. He thought about being alone as he looked around at everyone in their groups, spotting Mineta attempting to flirt with Momo. Mineta sarcastically remarked on his luck just as a chilling sensation crept up his spine, making his hair stand on end. He felt warm breath right behind him, causing him to gulp nervously. Turning around, he found Izuku glaring at him, eyes filled with an intensity that made Mineta fall back in fear, shrinking into himself. Terrified for his life, Mineta pleaded for mercy, his face reflecting unimaginable fear as tears streamed down his cheeks. Izuku then addressed Momo, asking if she would mind him joining her, to which she happily agreed. Suddenly, Izuku sensed a surge of dark energy. He alerted everyone that villains were approaching. Mandalay began to question him, but he cut her off, insisting he could sense the presence of living beings and that the energy felt overwhelmingly evil. 11 energies were surrounding them, and he urged everyone to prepare for a fight. Dropping into a battle stance, he powered up, and the others followed suit, readying themselves for the impending confrontation. Before they could react, slow, sarcastic clapping echoed through the forest, and a figure emerged from the shadows. The figure calmly addressed Izuku, his voice dripping with malice, asking if he was indeed Izuku Midoriya. Izuku, on high alert, demanded to know who he was and what he wanted. The figure revealed himself to be Frieza, the Emperor of Universe 7, a destroyer of planets. He expressed a twisted familiarity with Izuku, noting the presence of a tail that made him furious. Frieza declared his intention to exterminate Izuku for fun, viewing him as a training opportunity before facing a certain Scion. Izuku, puzzled by Frieza's words, warned him to back off before things escalated. He pondered the mention of a Scion, realizing he was one, but couldn't identify who Frieza was referring to. Suddenly, he noticed the other 10 villains surrounding them, one resembling a creature he recognized. Mandalay telepathically instructed everyone to prepare for battle, while Frieza arrogantly suggested he would handle Izuku himself. In an instant, Frieza vanished and reappeared, delivering a powerful punch to Izuku's stomach that sent him crashing through trees and into a mountain, leaving him gasping for breath. Frieza taunted him, expecting a worthy fight but quickly dismissing him as weak. As he prepared to finish Izuku off, Izuku caught Frieza's punch with one hand, surprising him. With a fierce glare, Izuku retaliated with a powerful strike to Frieza's gut, sending him flying. Frieza recovered quickly, launching a laser blast that Izuku narrowly dodged. The two exchanged blows, with Izuku countering Frieza's attacks with precision. As the battle intensified, Izuku unleashed energy blasts that shook the mountains. Sensing a massive surge of energy, he braced himself as Frieza launched a colossal energy ball at him. In a moment of desperation, Izuku activated his Kaioken technique, his muscles bulking up as he attempted to counter the blast. Frieza barreled through the explosion, landing a punch that sent Izuku soaring into the sky. Regaining his composure, Izuku powered up further, declaring a Kaioken ×3 transformation. He launched a fierce assault on Frieza, landing blows that visibly weakened him. Despite the toll the fight was taking on his body, Izuku pressed on, determined to protect his friends. Frieza, enraged, proclaimed his superiority and began forming a massive ball of red energy. Izuku's eyes widened in horror as Frieza threatened to obliterate his friends. As the energy ball hurtled toward them, Bakugo fought valiantly against Emma, Compressor and Spinner, rallying his classmates and heroes. They all looked up in shock at the incoming blast, realizing the danger they were in. Izuku, pushing himself to the limit, flew in front of the energy ball, struggling against its immense force. His hands burned from the heat as he fought to redirect the blast. With a fierce determination, he shouted, gathering all his energy for one final push. As he struck the ball, it exploded, sending shockwaves that knocked everyone to the ground, the impact feeling like a collision with a speeding vehicle. A loud crash echoed through the area, raising a cloud of dust. As the dust settled, everyone saw Izuku, battered and bleeding from multiple wounds. Momo rushed to his side, collapsing on the ground next to him as she conjured bandages. She reassured him that everything would be fine while gently applying the bandages to his wounds. Izuku struggled to keep his eyes open, utterly drained. Suddenly, Todoroki and a few others shouted a warning to Momo, but it was too late. Muscular seized her by the hair and hurled her into a nearby tree, causing Izuku's eyes to widen in shock. A surge of rage boiled within him as he growled. Clenching his fists until they bled, he pushed himself to his feet. "That's my Momo," he declared, his voice filled with determination. His energy flared dramatically, sending a shockwave that pushed everyone back. His hair and aura transformed into a brilliant gold, crackling with electricity. Muscular taunted him, mocking the situation, but Izuku vanished in an instant, reappearing beside him. With a powerful punch, he struck Muscular's jaw, a loud crack resonating through the air. Izuku then drove Muscular into the ground, creating a deep crater. As the dust settled again, it revealed Muscular, heavily injured with a broken jaw, unconscious and possibly in critical condition. Izuku stood tall, glaring at the villains, his energy continuing to surge as he crouched slightly and disappeared once more. Once Izuku saw his beloved Momo grabbed by Muscular and thrown against a tree, the loud impact ignited a furious response within him. He shouted at the top of his lungs, declaring that Momo was his. As Izuku powered up, his hair glowed golden, and he suddenly vanished, reappearing in Muscular's blind spot. A powerful fist connected with Muscular's jaw, producing a sound that echoed through the area. Muscular was sent flying in the opposite direction, his jaw dislocated and blood trickling from his mouth. The other villains felt the weight of Izuku's presence, paralyzed with fear as they realized the gravity of their mistake. Izuku's speed was astonishing. No one saw him appear behind Dabi. In a swift motion, he grabbed both of Dabi's arms and pulled them back, delivering a forceful kick that resulted in a sickening crunch. Dabi dropped to the ground, unable to contain his cries of pain. Toga attempted to stab Izuku, but before she could react, he vanished again, only to reappear and deliver a kick that left her incapacitated. The remaining villains Magna, Twice, Spinner, and Compress pleaded for mercy, but Izuku swiftly dealt with them, leaving them unable to continue the fight. With the villains subdued, Izuku turned his attention to Frieza, only to find that he had vanished. Suddenly, a black portal appeared, revealing Kurogiri, who had come to retrieve the failed vanguard. As Izuku rushed toward the spot where Momo had been thrown, he found her with a large bruise and a broken tree branch nearby. He held her close, tears streaming down his face as he expressed his sorrow for not being able to protect her. Momo gently placed a hand on his face and looked deeply into his eyes, reassuring him that it was okay and that they had been ambushed. She explained that she only had a bad bruise. Izuku insisted it was not okay, emphasizing that she was his girlfriend and the future mother of their children, vowing to keep her safe. Momo responded that she would work to become stronger so he wouldn't have to worry about her. As Momo attempted to stand, her legs gave out, prompting Izuku to carry her in his arms from the area. The others watched with concern, but when they realized her injuries were not severe, they breathed a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Frieza seethed with anger, frustrated that All for One had not informed him about the legendary form of the Super Scion that Izuku had attained. He left for the League of Villains base to devise a plan against both Izuku and the Symbol of Peace. Back at the camp, all the students had survived the villains' attack with only minor injuries. They were taken to the hospital for treatment, and parents were notified of the incident. As parents began to arrive, Izuku felt a sense of loneliness, being an orphan, and waited with Momo until her parents came. When Momo's parents arrived, Izuku stood up to give them privacy. Just as he was about to leave, he was stopped by Mr. Yaoyorozu. Izuku expressed his regret for not being able to protect Momo and offered to stay away if that was what they wanted. To his surprise, Momo's father, Takashi, embraced him, showing no anger about the events that had unfolded. He expressed relief that both Izuku and Momo were safe and acknowledged that Izuku had brought his daughter back alive, allowing him to continue seeing her. Izuku promised to do better. After leaving the Yaoyorozu family to have their moment, Izuku made his way to the roof of the hospital. Taking in the fresh air, he found himself lost in thought when a voice echoed in his mind, congratulating him on breaking through the first barrier. It was the same voice he had heard when unlocking his full potential. The voice warned him of an impending major battle and urged him to be prepared, assuring him that he would know when they arrived. When Izuku arrived on the roof, he took a deep breath of fresh air, lost in thought, when a voice echoed in his mind. It was the voice of someone he recognized from the moment he unlocked his full potential. The voice congratulated him for breaking through the first barrier and warned him of an impending major battle, urging him to be prepared for their arrival. Izuku wondered how he would know when they came, but the voice assured him that he would know. After everyone had recovered from the villain attack, they returned to the dorms at UA, where security had been heightened for the safety of the young heroes in training. Class 1A was relaxing in the common room when suddenly, an overwhelming pressure filled the air, reminiscent of the time Izuku transformed into a Super Scion, but far more intense. The pro-heroes in charge of the dorms rushed outside to investigate the source of this ominous energy. Izuku tensed, and Momo, sensing his determination, silently communicated her support through her gaze. In an instant, Izuku teleported outside, standing before the teachers just as a group of mysterious figures appeared before them, radiating an almost divine pressure. One of them introduced himself as Beerus, the god of destruction, and stated that he was seeking Izuku Midoriya. Upon confirming his identity, Beerus expressed the urgency of their meeting, noting that they should not waste any time. The pro-heroes were puzzled about how Izuku had known of their arrival, prompting All Might to ask Beerus for an explanation. Whis, Beerus's assistant, clarified that the individuals before them were known as the Limitbreakers. Aizawa was skeptical, having thought the Limitbreakers were merely fairy tales. Whis introduced the group, which included Gohan, Piccolo, Trunks, Goku, Vegeta, Krillin, and Master Roshi. Izuku felt a surge of concern and curiosity about what lay ahead. Gohan explained that they had come to train Izuku for a significant battle that would likely disrupt the balance of the world. All Might questioned what this balance entailed, and Beerus indicated it was the equilibrium between good and evil. The atmosphere grew serious as the reality of the situation settled in. Aizawa asked if it would be possible for all of them to train together. Beerus confirmed that while they could help strengthen their bodies and quirks, none would reach the level of Izuku's potential. Aizawa insisted on gathering all the students, knowing they would need every advantage if the battle threatened the balance of good and evil. Beerus agreed, instructing them to assemble outside before teleporting them to a special training ground high in the sky. As Class 1A gathered, they felt an even greater pressure up close to the source. Piccolo took charge of training the rest of the class while Izuku was led by Beerus, Whis, Goku, Vegeta, Krillin, Trunks, and Roshi to the Hyperbolic Time Chamber. Goku explained that within the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, one day equated to a full year of training. Izuku affirmed his readiness. While back on the ground, the pro-heroes sensed an unusual stillness in the city, anticipating that something significant was about to occur. In an abandoned warehouse, All for One instructed Shigaraki to contact Overhaul and bring Frieza, as they planned to assemble a formidable army. Moments before entering the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, Izuku's classmates wished him luck, hoping he would emerge even stronger. Momo placed a hand on his shoulder, expressing her support with a gentle gesture. Goku inquired if she was his sweetheart, to which Izuku confirmed that she meant everything to him. Krillin suggested that her presence would be key in unlocking Izuku's other Scion forms, explaining that envisioning her in danger would ignite his protective instincts and unleash his true power. As the training commenced, Class 1A began preparing for the unexpected. Piccolo led the other students with relentless determination, emphasizing that pain was merely weakness leaving the body. Everyone pushed themselves beyond their limits. After several hours, an immense pressure emanated from the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, rivaling the intensity felt when the Scions first arrived. Inside the chamber, Izuku engaged in intense group combat training, learning to fight against multiple opponents simultaneously. He began to grasp the essence of his first Super Saiyan form, familiarizing himself with the power boost it provided, and focused on mastering the ability to maintain that power. Goku instructed Izuku to hold onto his newfound power until it felt as natural as his regular form. Izuku, currently in Super Saiyan form, felt his energy flare up, making him even more powerful. Once the power stabilized, it felt comfortable for him. Goku praised Izuku's progress, explaining that when they exited the time chamber, he would be a year older and the pressure surrounding him would be immense. Gohan, taking a moment to catch his breath, asked Izuku to share how he had tapped into his Scion heritage. Vegeta echoed this sentiment, emphasizing that becoming a Scion was not an easy feat. Izuku began to recount his story, starting from the day he returned home from school. He had noticed the door to his house ajar and discovered a villain attempting to abduct his mother. In a rush to save her, he found himself in a villain hideout, facing off against a notorious foe known as All for One. In mere moments, he was overpowered. The Scions and the God of Destruction listened intently, eager to understand how he had channeled his Scion bloodline. Gohan urged him to continue. Izuku described how, after his defeat, He was subjected to torment, with the villains attempting to corrupt him. Despite their efforts, his spirit remained unbroken, but they ultimately took his mother from him. They used a quirk to show him alternate dimensions, forcing him to witness the destruction of friends and loved ones. In one dimension, he discovered he was a Scion, inheriting memories and skills from previous lives. As Izuku shared his tale, his anger intensified, causing him to ascend to Super Scion. The pressure emanating from him was extraordinary. Outside the time chamber, everyone training suddenly found themselves on their knees, as if an invisible force was pushing them down. Piccolo sensed the immense power from the chamber, recognizing it as Izuku's. Once the pressure lifted, everyone stood up, curious about what would happen next. They resumed their training for the day, awaiting developments. Back in the chamber, the timer for the hyperbolic time chamber was nearing its end. Izuku had grown accustomed to his Super Saiyan form, and it was time for him to rest and learn to maintain his new abilities even while asleep. As night fell at the lookout, everyone relaxed after a grueling day of training. Many felt significant improvements in their quirks. Momo, however, couldn't help but glance at the door to the hyperbolic time chamber, wondering when Izuku would emerge. Piccolo suggested that everyone get some sleep, as the next day's training would be even more challenging. The night passed, and training resumed at 5 a.m. Many were still sore from the previous day. Just as training was about to begin, the door to the chamber opened, and all members of Class 1A and their hero allies turned to see Izuku Midoriya stepping out, transformed. As Izuku emerged, he appeared more mature, his hair now glowing golden in the sunlight. Momo rushed to him, embracing him and noticing his muscular build and subtle changes. Izuku acknowledged that he had learned to control the power he had tapped into during the training camp. He attempted to re-enter the chamber, but Piccolo stopped him, explaining that there was a limit to its use per person and that he would need to wait a day before returning. Izuku asked what he could do in the meantime. Goku suggested that everyone take a full recovery day and set up a hero headquarters in the dorms to maintain constant reports of villain activity. Holding Momo close, Izuku used instant transmission to bring everyone back to the dorm entrance, where they established the hero headquarters. Reports of silence from the villains disturbed them greatly. Izuku recalled the events leading up to the USJ attack, and a tense atmosphere settled over the group as he predicted that a significant confrontation was imminent. All Might inquired if Izuku could elaborate on his concerns. Izuku explained that the villains who had escaped during the training camp likely informed their leader, and it was probable they were gathering a massive army for an all-out war. The thought sent chills down everyone's spines, realizing they would have to fight to survive. Kaminari asked if the Limitbreakers would assist them in the upcoming war. Beerus, however, delivered the shocking news that the Limitbreakers were no longer alive. The revelation stunned everyone. Izuku questioned how they were present if that was the case. Goku clarified that they had been waiting for the return of a Limitbreaker. Other Limitbreakers could communicate through dreams, and since Izuku was the last one, they had stored enough energy for 5 days to meet and train him. Izuku asked what would happen when the 5 days were up. Goku explained that their spirits would return to their original realm until they could gather more energy to return. They were utilizing the hyperbolic time chamber for rapid results. Goku concluded by urging everyone to rest, as tomorrow would bring another day of training in the time chamber.